Waiting on that monitor there. Oh, and here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes.
We should have just had council at Walmart. Most of us are there.
At what?
We should have just had council.
The monitor went off.
Serious.
Do you want me to check, Mayor?
Hi, guys. All right. Would you shut that door? Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, June 9th, 2014. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I forgot to do this, so now you have to stand and do the pledge again. Sorry. Just kidding. Cheryl Lynn, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Lennon, Martin.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Piana.
Here.
Mayor Coulter.
Here. Thank you very much. We do have a quorum.
I move to excuse Mike Lennon from our meeting tonight.
Support.
All right. Is there unanimous consent?
Yes.
All right. Mike's girlfriend is in the hospital this evening having surgery, and so that's where he's at this evening. We wish her a speedy recovery. Our next order of business, is the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes or additions, comments on the agenda this evening?
I make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Polika, supported by Martin. Any discussion? Cheryl, would you call the roll?
Council members Martin.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. Moving on to presentations. We have 3 presentations this evening. The first one is a resolution of appreciation for William Geer, Jr. And I'm going to read that. And Mike and Dee Dee, why don't you come up? You're going to accept the resolution. And I'll give you an opportunity to speak right after I read this. But I want folks to know what we're doing tonight. So this is a proclamation from the City of Ferndale honoring William Geer, Jr. for his generous donation to purchase cameras for our police SUVs. I, Mayor Dave Coulter, on behalf of the Ferndale City Council, extends the city's appreciation to William Geer, Jr. for his generous donation to the Ferndale Police Department made in the memory of Dennis Hopner and in acknowledgement of Dennis's son, Michael. William Geer, Jr. made a generous donation to purchase cameras for our police SUVs when he observed an officer backing up in a parking lot and ascertained that vehicles were not equipped with backup cameras. William Geer, Jr. is a credit to this community, and it is with heartfelt appreciation that we recognize his generous donation and thoughtfulness in memorializing Dennis Hopner and acknowledging Dennis's son, Michael Hopner. Michael, you're here this evening. Welcome. Good to see you, and I'll just tell you, we still miss your dad.
So do we.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Have anything to add, please?
Yeah, I do, just a little bit.
Of course.
Just a little bit. Mr. Mayor, Ferndale Police Department, distinguished members of the council, and the residents of Ferndale. On behalf and in the name of Dennis Hopner, his daughter Denise, and I are truly honored and proud to accept this resolution to provide for a safer community that he loved and cherished. To have our father memorialized on this resolution solidifies how he shared his commitment, dedication, and humor with all in the community and his family. He did so with great pride and dignity, all the way to his last hours. Is there a greater, prouder, more dignified man? Dennis set the bar pretty high. From the family of Dennis Hopner, with great gratitude, we'd like to thank William Geer Jr. and the City of Ferndale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me. Actually, does this go to you, or are we going to give this to William?
Thank you.
Our next presentation this evening is a update on the 360 development team. And Derek Delacourt, you're going to lead that off for us this evening?
I think so, with a lot of help.
All right.
Good evening. Previously, when City Council entered into some discussions regarding the 360 project and entered into the exclusivity agreement with the development team, it was agreed to as part of that, and at that meeting, that they would come back to Council approximately every 90 days and give an update on the project, what they've been doing, what they've been working on. So they are here to do that tonight. We have members from each part of the development team. They have been working with staff quite diligently on moving the project forward. We're about where we anticipated to be at this point. They've been working with city staff, staff from the DDA, and are ready now to kind of walk through where they're at with the program, some conceptual ideas for the project, numbers for parking, some additional things, and then obviously we'll be here to answer any questions at the back end of it. So with that, I'm going to invite them up here to get started. There'll probably be 2 or 3 different people speak as part of it. So.
Great.
Thank you. It's great to be back in front. Just a couple updates from our side. At a high level, we've made a significant investment in the project, focusing on momentum, community, and the overall program. We are doing what we said we would do, and we're going beyond that. And I feel that with this project, one goal of ours is to set the standard for city and private development programming. So this is where the bar needs to go. At a high level, we'll be talking about the program and schematic design for mixed-use development, massing, adjacencies, and parking requirements. With parking, we've had a meeting with Carl Walker and Republic Parking working on the plan and analysis. We're announcing today that Krieger Klatt has been officially selected as our architects for the project, and they'll be walking through the presentation shortly. With the community, we've been working with DDA, the Chamber, and the City to create a plan for DDA stakeholders, which Christina will be talking about in a second. Our process, we've had weekly meetings, as Derek mentioned, and I've made sure that I've been available within the city as a kind of a program manager, organizing all the various steps that need to be taken. And last but not least, on a social side, we've been promoting this heavily at the conferences, including Tech Week Detroit, the Mackinac Policy Conference, as well as various significant press interest on what we've announced, as well as what we're doing going forward. So we believe this is a tremendous opportunity, and we're as excited, if not more excited, than the last time we were up here. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Christina to speak briefly about our plans with the DDA.
Okay.
Thank you. And basically, just to start off, we are going to be holding some stakeholder meetings that will allow more people to come out and hear some of the conceptual designs, as well as to give their input. And basically what we are looking to do is we are looking with these stakeholder meetings is to approach our businesses, as well as our property owners within the DDA district that are immediately impacted within that area being proposed, as well as throughout the district, to make sure that we're hearing from them what concerns they may have, what ideas they might have, what we might have to look forward to in terms of planning for implementation stages. And when I started looking at the communication of this, this is pre-communication at this point. We want to get as much input from our stakeholders as much as possible to be able to provide that to the developers so that they have a great framework to start from and to really build upon. And then from there, with our stakeholders, be able to communicate back what is being planned and take them throughout the process. So in terms of planning and design to actual being prepared for construction and implementation, making sure that we are focusing on different stakeholders at each element and point. So, so on June 30th, we will be holding a stakeholder meeting at Level 1 Bank at 9 a.m. We are going to be reaching out to some very specific property owners and business owners within that area. But any of these meetings are open if anyone would like to attend. We are also encouraging any residents that may abut the adjacent properties to come out to these stakeholder meetings as well. And then also that same evening, we'll be at the Rust Belt Market. at 6 p.m. And just confirm these today, so I do have to, it's like, throwing those out there. But we have been working closely with Jake to find some dates, as well as making sure that council has had this opportunity at this point to be able to review the designs and what 360 has to present. So from there, we'll take that information that is presented.
And I'm sorry, the West Belt market, the target audience.
Target audience would still be businesses that would be in the northwest quadrant of the district. So we're focusing primarily northwest quadrant at that point. However, we'll definitely invite those who are on the southwest quadrant. We will also hold a third meeting. That date is yet to be determined, but that will be for the east side of the district, so east of Woodward. Because we know that when a project of this magnitude comes into play, that it's not just going to affect those that are directly abutting the project. It is going to have an impact on our entire downtown and actually how we grow as a community overall. So it's important to hear from everybody. I think the best thing that we can walk away with this is to know that we have done our job in listening to what everybody has to say and try to address any of those concerns as best as we can. And for us, I think it's also to learn from them how else they want to be communicated to throughout this course and what we can plan for.
Will there be any of the meetings dedicated specifically for residents, or will they just be encouraged to come to one of these?
No, we are. We're going to do similar style meetings with some residential groups too. We haven't set the date.
Okay.
We've talked about and some different ideas with specifically targeted maybe at people's homes for smaller groups, and then maybe a larger citywide resident forum. And those dates will be available hopefully very shortly. We're working on those as well. But the answer is yes. We're going to do some resident only, and especially those Withington, Saratoga, Troy that are directly impacted. We'll do some direct reach out to them and maybe even do a little bit of walking and talking to some of the neighborhoods over there as well. So all of this is going to take place in the next 30 to 60 days between the stakeholder focus groups and the residential meetings. We would like to schedule one larger meeting, though, within the next 45 or so days to invite everybody to come and maybe have a town hall style meeting as well. So you'll see dates for those relatively soon.
Thank you.
I do have one question. At our last city council meeting, or I think at every city council meeting since this project has started, we've asked for a written outreach plan to actually see what you plan to do before you actually do it, and why. So I was wondering if you have that ready for council's review, because you guys are starting to outreach. And so the outreach would be documenting intended stakeholders that you plan to talk to, small group discussions, how many, what your intended outcome is. So that's what a written outreach plan is.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that a written plan was requested, but we'll definitely put together a documented plan for you. I've already started something that we were working from to kind of talk about the audiences. And really, when we're looking at a communication plan, we're talking about what are all the audiences that we need to communicate to and how we're going to communicate to them and at what levels. So that type of information can be provided fairly easily, but we will have to kind of sit back now and look at timelines to be able to apply those for you. So.
If I may, through the chair, not only through the construction plan, but at the National Main Street Conference, I attended a session that was particularly effectively done for the city of Rochester about how to survive a major construction effort. And one of their suggestions, which I think was quite powerful, was they started almost 2 years out to talk about how to survive a major construction problem, including building your mailing list, communicating ahead of time for businesses to their customers of that mailing list, alternative parking plans and access plans. And I would really love to see that kind of education as part of that outreach in these meetings, not only informing them in educational components, which you focused on, but also how to get from A to B. You know, it'd be fabulous when everything's built and everything else, but how you survive through that process and how you get there when parking may very well be restricted. And I think that's a very functional and important role of the DDA in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that is part of the rollout. So there are phases, as I had mentioned. At this point, the DDA Board of Directors hasn't even had an opportunity to meet with 360 Project to review this. So I am speaking a little bit premature to be able to say what all is going to be within that plan. But I think that those are definitely the things that we want to be able to provide to not only our businesses in the district, but really the entire community. Because once we're working on this and having all that information out there, it's really there for everybody to participate in. Some of the other things that I know that we have also talked about is really having a dedicated webpage for this and information that is available online at any point in time so people can review it and see it. Because I think we need to be able to help to continue to promote the message of what is happening, and at different stages as it changes, especially when you get through a construction project, as we have learned, is that things change quite drastically sometimes at times for a change in schedules. So we want to make sure that that type of information is laid out there throughout.
I would, with all due respect, I'd agree with that, and I think you guys have the expertise around that, particularly around how well you handled the West 9 Mile project. I would encourage you, though, to, instead of going to a new website, look at Ferndale Moves and other existing kind of transit websites that exist today without recreating the wheel and access those through points.
Right. I also wanted to be clear, too, that I see the communications outreach plan as shared document between the city and DDA. I don't think it's just the DDA's responsibility to manage. So it's a shared partnership here. But I also wanted to say, too, council asked you to go above and beyond what's basic for outreach for development projects, and I clearly see you doing that. We just like to have this written plan so that we can explain to people, we have planned this out, and now we're executing our outreach.
Yeah, and I think the answer to your question is yes. We've been working on both of them, first trying to get input from stakeholders, which is really the first phase, and then after tonight we'll have a good idea on the direction of the project, and we'll be able to take what is the outline of that communications plan and put the final pieces into it and prepare it for everybody's review. But I think you've heard the pieces of it here tonight in theory. We'd like to walk through the project, make sure that the development team and we all feel we're still on the same page, still moving in the same direction. And then based on that, we'll be able to finalize some of these pieces and move on to the next phase. So the answer is yes, and it's coming shortly.
So let's hear more.
Introduce the architect for the project, and he'll be walking you through the concepts and slides. He's got the best part of the presentation.
We just have a lot of pretty pictures, guys. We're just going to flip around.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jason Krieger with Krieger-Klatt Architects. This is Jeff Klatt with Krieger-Klatt Architects. We're here to present the 360s project. We're very proud to present this to you guys tonight. As mentioned, this is kind of a snapshot in time of where we are. Over the past, several weeks, we've gotten to the point where we're at the completion of program development. So we looked at space planning, area allocation, massing studies, and placemaking. What you're going to see is a presentation that is more focused on spaces, where they go, and then we have some renderings in here that are just kind of like inspirational pieces. They are renderings to this, but they're meant to kind of capture the environment, the mood, the vibe, and those are things that we use as we go through the design. So what I'd like to do is start at a high level, start on some site plan issues, and then we'll go through each development. We'll touch on the Withington lot first, and then the Troy Street lot. This right here is an aerial photograph of downtown Ferndale. I think everybody recognizes this. You have Woodward right there, and then 9 Mile going right through here. The lots right there in yellow are the lots that we are working on. So you have the Withington lot right here, and the Troy Street lot. This right here is a lot of information, but it's actually quite simple. This is a site analysis. And we formalized it a little bit, but these are things that we do to kind of look at the overall, layout of the town, areas of importance, and it helps to drive the design. So what you see here is that we have some major arterial streets, such as Woodward, some major collectors, such as 9 Mile. And then these circles right here are nodes. And these are important areas that are like collision points between traffic, between pedestrians. They're important areas, and they're areas that drove the design as to what we did with the buildings. One important piece here is that there's a pedestrian connection right here from 9 Mile to the parking lot. You can see here on the Troy Street lot, there's obviously an important corner right there, and then there's also a secondary node right there. Another reason why we colored the parking lots yellow is because you can see that parking lots can break up streetscape. And that's just a urban design thing. Everybody knows that if you've been on the planning commission or if you're in the field. And what I want to show here is that with our proposal, what we're doing is we're actually expanding the downtown. And we're creating more of a buffer between the downtown and the surrounding residential environment. So if you look at the Withington lot, we have our residential development on the northwest corner. This actually partners up nicely with the Withington Apartments, and it provides a transition to the neighborhood, which is directly to the north. We're breaking up what once was a large parking lot with office uses at 260 and 360, and then at 360 it also transitions down to the ground and becomes some expanded retail space. If you look at 160, what we have here is the same thing, where now we're actually extending the downtown fabric to the south, and along this piece right here we're able to provide some retail. Below the office space on 160 is more parking. The first lot that I want to talk about is the Withington lot. There are approximately 600 parking spaces. There's just north of that. When I'm saying approximately is because we counted them, we have it, but we're still working out the details on the buildings. There's on-grade parking with 3 supported levels.
And what, I'm sorry, and what is, how many current spaces are there on that lot? Derek, maybe you know that.
Do you remember, Dennis?
I think it's 300.
Huh?
I think it's 300.
Yeah, do you know what that is, Kristen? 240.
240, so from 240 to 600.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have, let me just flip over to something that might be easier to show you the concept of that site. This right here is an isometric of that lot. So what we have on the north end is the residential building. We have 260, which is on top of the parking deck in the center. And then we have 360 on the east end with the retail down on the bottom. Each one of the office buildings, well, the first office building, which is 260, has about 20,000 square feet for each floor plate, which gets us to 60,000 square feet. 360 has 12,500, which gets us to about 75,000 square feet. And then the West End Lofts, which was the purple shaded building that I showed you, it's between 8 and 10 stories, and it'll have between 100 to 120 units, just depending on the final design. There's also a rooftop terrace between 260 and 360 that's going to serve as outdoor space for the tech companies or the businesses that go in there. This right here is the ground floor, and then we have the site overlaid around it. So you see here is that we have an access point and egress point here, which is similar to what's there because it works. And we have one right here on the northeast end of the building as well. This right here is part of the residential development at grade. This here is part of the commercial development that's at grade. And then the way that it works is you would come in, this is all at grade, you'd circulate through the parking deck, and then there would be a ramp. Right now we have the ramp on the north end of the site. This right represents levels 2 and 3. So what you have is this building, which is the West End Lofts, continues to go up. This turns into office space. And then on the top level, you have the outdoor patio, office, additional parking. There's about 50 spaces right there. And then the residential continues to go up. This right here is a elevation and then also a section that represents the massing. So what you can see here is that in the white area, this is parking with the office space up on top, full office with retail on the bottom, and then the residential. This right here is the slide that I showed you previously with the isometric. And these are just snapshots that give you an idea of what we see happening with the rooftop terrace, a street level view of the lofts, and then different shots along the alleyway. These are the enlarged views.
And if I may, not to interrupt, while
no, please do.
These images may look enormous, this is the existing Withington footprint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the perspective of being down low gives the impression that everything is super high.
Yeah.
We're purposely not showing, we're trying not to show architectural details so much because we don't want to get hung up on what the buildings look like yet. We're trying to still design all of that. That's really the next level for us.
So for us, again, it's more about, is this space nice up here on the roof deck? Can we do a really nice space down here at the alleyway or along the side street? So that's really where we are with it. Yeah, it may be a little bit more deceiving. They're not any taller than the building just to the east of us here.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, yeah, the east. So this right here is the Troy Street development. I'll let Jeff walk you through that.
Good evening, Jeff Klatt. This is a general overview of the Troy Street development, tongue twister there. And again, this building contains 4 major uses. The first is the parking deck, and this contains about 275 spaces over about 3 levels, ground floor plus 2 levels above that. We have about 5,000 square feet of retail space along Allen Road to the west, and above that retail space is about 5,000 square feet of flex space or conference rooms or meeting space. And then the remainder of the program consists of about 60,000 square feet of office space over 2 levels, so 30,000 and 30,000. This is the first floor ground level. As you can see, this is bound by Troy Avenue and then Allen Road to the west. Everything in blue, with the area in blue, area highlighted in blue, is the retail space on the first floor. So that's along Allen Road. We felt that was a nice transition from 9 Mile to the residential neighborhood to the south. There is at the very corner here is the entry point to the office space above. So that'll link you to the office at the 2nd through 5th levels. The remainder of the space in white is the parking component, and there are several entry points along Troy Avenue, one being right there. This is floors 2 through 3. So again, the blue indicates as I mentioned, about 5,000 square feet of conference space. So this is really a one-story space shown here on both levels, but it's really a one-story space with a higher ceiling or higher volume. And then again, the same thing, the parking space that'd be to the east. So that's the 2nd and 3rd level of parking. And this is the 4th and 5th floor of the building, and everything in blue is the office space, about 30,000 per floor. And what we did here, to respect the residential to that would be to the south and also to the west, we stepped the building back a bit to create a terrace in that level. So visually it helped to step that massing back a little bit to respect the residential component. This is a view of the elevation from Troy Street and also a section below that. By section, we mean a cut through the building. So the areas in blue, that would be the office space up on the 4th and 5th level, and then that in the retail on the first to your right-hand side there, and then that conference space above. So everything on the lower level, the first 3 levels will be the parking. And that's just a hint at the building's exterior. Again, these are schematic drawings right now. They're just showing a general material palette of possibly brick, maybe some exposed structure and glass. And this is an isometric view of the same building. So it's really a bird's eye view along Troy Street. So again, everything in blue would be the commercial component above. You can see the retail there in the bottom corner.
And I'm curious, what is the theory or the thought behind putting the retail along Allen versus putting it along Troy?
Really, it's a connection point to the residential behind to the south. So really, we're extending from 9 Mile to the residence. We thought it was a nice way to transition that point. So just a buffer to help soften that a bit.
Also, can you go back to the plan, Jeff?
Sure.
Can you reemphasize, I'm sorry, maybe this is the best map to do that, the access points to the parking garage? Where's the projected entry and exit?
Right now, bear with me here, right now is right over here. That's our proposed parking deck entry point. It's just one entry.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's still in flux. The parking deck is not totally designed yet, so we know we'll have an entry point along Troy Street.
But it wouldn't be on Allen, because that's where the commercial is going to be. So, and that's important, I think, just traffic-wise. And that's maybe another reason why you put retail along Allen, so that the entry point is on Troy.
Great point.
Yeah, I would think that, in our discussions, it's better to keep the traffic along Troy Street versus Allen, because it's closer to the residential.
Yes.
The other thing is obviously, the retail, we thought it was a nice way to, again, buffer a deck to the homes. It would be challenging to place. It would be challenging to place retail along Troy simply because of the depth. Right now, what we can do, because of the depth of the lot, is we can double load the parking deck, which makes it more efficient. As soon as we have retail in here, we're taking up parking spaces and we're increasing the size of the deck. So we felt that we were achieving some of that with this. But another thing that came up is that we talked about possibly doing display windows or something along Troy, things that maybe local businesses could advertise in. It's done in other decks in other cities. And that's something that I think that we'll just hear more of. With these study sessions, we understand that this is a moving target, and these are, this is going to evolve.
Yes.
So, again, we haven't thought of that. And
No, I was just going to add too. I want to remind everybody, the Planning Commission staff, we've just seen these for the first time recently as well. We haven't even gone through an evaluation for access points. Nobody's had a chance to comment on this as well. So we don't want anybody to think that any of this is laid out in stone yet. It's a starting point.
I won't hold you to it, but I thought it was an important point.
Yeah, I see a lot of people looking, and I hear a lot of conversation going on. I think everybody's aware we have a very strong Planning Commission as well. They'll see this again on Thursday night for the first time. I'm sure everybody's going to have some opinions, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about exactly how this is all oriented before it's said and done. So I just wanted to point this out. This isn't anything that's been reviewed or looked at yet from a technical point.
That's a good point that I would reiterate. In a lot of respects, it's premature to even have this discussion. It hasn't been to Planning Commission. It hasn't been to a lot of places. But we have made the commitment that we want to be as transparent and open about this, and we haven't talked to you in a few months. So know that a lot of this is moving target, but the more we start talking about it, the more residents have an opportunity to react and offer input. So I hear you that we're early, but
okay. I just want to make sure that nobody thought that this had been reviewed for technical compliance at this point.
Hey, Derek, how many parking spots are currently in the Troy Street or Christia?
120. It's 120 and 180.
180.
Sorry, I've been too many parking numbers on the brain. 180 in Troy, 240 in Withington. So.
And back to that point. I mean, it's we wanted to get everything out that we had to get the feedback.
This is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, is there a particular reason? I mean, I know that the trash and receptacle is along the business building. I can't even remember the name of that white building. But is there any reason why you didn't take the building all the way over to abut it and include that recycling and trash area within the parking area on the first floor and use that much more space?
No, I believe isn't there an alleyway there, Jeff?
It does. I believe it does.
I would hate to see some kind of alleyway there that it's just more of a eyesore than.
That's something we're going to have to take a look at.
Yeah, take a look at it, yeah. All right.
I'm sorry, Jeff, here.
Oh, yeah, you're on his time now.
Yeah, let's see. I think we were in conclusion here. Again, this was the isometric or bird's eye view. We looked at the retail along Allen Street. The parking is in white, as you can see, on levels 1 through 3. And everything blue, again, was commercial, up on the 4th and 5th levels. The view up top, that's a view from Allen to the downtown. There's a better shot if you look at the next slide here. So this is from Allen looking towards 9 Mile. So you get a view of the Withington building behind 9 Mile right there. You can see the Buffalo Wild Wings. Sorry, that is right there. You can see the Withington structure. There's Buffalo Wild Wings right here. Rosie O'Grady's at the corner right here. This point right here is the entrance to the office component or office tower. You can see the street level retail along this line. So again, you can see the pedestrian activity, the connection from 9 Mile all the way back to the residential district.
This is simply a rendering on 9 Mile looking east.
You can see the two buildings. There's Troy Street, and there's the Withington.
So, I mean, it was really a study to see what would happen. So I think, it's rather important to see that we're still maintaining the character of the downtown.
And this is an interesting view to me because some views it feels overwhelming, but when you look at it like this at ground level, I don't want to use the word underwhelming, but I think you do get a sense that it just sort of, it fits in more than it feels like when you look at one building, isolated like that. I don't know if you have other angles of this view, but I think that's a very interesting perspective, because that's what it's actually going to look like. And it doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't feel like it overpowers the downtown. It feels like it wraps it nicely.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Mayor. That was my point with an earlier comment. It doesn't overpower the downtown or take things over. It's very much in the character and the flow and complementary to that. So I appreciate this view as well.
I encourage you to imagine a bus rapid transit.
You know, it's funny. I just automatically assumed it was there.
Because these types of buildings, you know, really work well in terms of tracking tenants with bus rapid transit. So it's sort of appropriate. Both are presenting tonight.
That's not going to happen down 9 Mile, though.
No, but you're looking at, but you'd be looking at Woodward, so.
Yeah.
And Derek, how many stories, or what's the height of the Credit Union one, just to give us perspective?
5.
5.
Yes.
Nice.
It's it would be similar to the height of the 3 office buildings. It would be similar in height to the Credit Union one. The residential tower on the west side of the Withington lot is very similar to the height of the Ferndale Housing tower across the street. They're very compatible in height. That one's 7 stories or 8 stories? I think it's 7. And yours is 8, right? Yeah. So it's 1 story higher. So they're very compatible in height.
What is our current height maximum? Does this require an exception?
No, right now you're below 80 feet still, which is
right around.
Yeah, depending on final
80
grading.
feet is the
80
current
feet in
maximum?
the CBD.
And that's inclusive of our infrastructure to support such buildings in the event of whatever.
Say again?
And that's inclusive of our ability to support such buildings from a public safety perspective.
Yes, I believe so. I think we'll have a building tall enough now for the fire chief.
We got ladders.
Big
In other
truck
words,
on
we
it.
have ladders that high.
Yeah, we
feet.
have the truck.
Fire
The
chief-
ladder's going to cheap us out.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Right,
we're
right.
trying to get him some more buildings to
Yeah.
play with. So.
All right.
It was very important to us to make sure that this design fits in with the town. This is a big development, but we don't want it to feel that way. So that's the purpose for breaking up these office components here and there. That's the purpose why we kept Troy Street a little bit lower and stepped the massing back. Yeah, so we're just trying to be respectful to the existing town.
Thank you.
In regards to the Troy Street project, the description doesn't say anything, nor does the renderings. Do you plan on doing anything with the rooftop?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Well, we do have a couple like little terraces planned here, and where we're stepping the building back on the south and on the west. Here.
Okay.
And then around the back.
I was actually thinking of the entire roof.
Rooftop?
Even if it was
Green
green,
roof?
just a green roof.
Not right now, we don't, no.
Okay.
You could hold
The
a party
planning
up
commission
there.
is going to ask you about that, I can guarantee it.
Okay.
And it won't come from me.
All right.
So that really concludes our presentation as to where we are. So we're available for questions and.
I think, are you
Dennis,
presenting, or are you just, are you?
Presenting along with everyone.
All right, come on up. So we're not quite ready yet for questions. So-
Yeah. And Dennis Griffin,
Yeah.
CBRE. I'm acting as a consultant to the development team, and I'm very encouraged by the feedback and, the comments. At this point, it is quite advanced for what our first exercise is program development. So my goal is to see what your reaction is to the overall program. And some of the program items, I've had discussions with Russ Randall and Republic Parking on getting in the ballpark or the requirement for the parking in terms of current demand in the city. That study is continuing, and then what the new demand from these individual components, and then shared analysis. And speaking with Russ today, we're in the ballpark on the 2 lots. That's meaning the Withington development, the Troy Street development, in terms of making sure that there's adequate parking for the additional, and then he has to refine and get some additional information from Republic on the current demand from the 2 lots. The next step for us is to, if we have, basically an agreement that this general program, which is the overall size of the sites, they're basically 0 lot line on 2 of the 2 lots. We didn't investigate any further going east into the Troy lot yet. We might have missed it on the survey, but we certainly can investigate that. It might be an opportunity to have a pass-through and even extend, get some additional parking at limited cost. But the idea of having 160, which is over the Troy lot, it's two 30,000 square foot floor plates, which lets us cast a broad net for certain technology companies that are of decent scale. They're not massive tech companies, like even some you might hear going in Royal Oak or other that are over 100,000 square feet. That would accommodate a 60,000 square foot, but it's also set to accommodate two 30,000 square foot or down to 15,000 square foot tenants in an efficient manner. And then going to 260, which is the three 20,000 square foot floor plates, basically connected to the pass-through on 9 Mile. That gives a different feel and a different audience. That's the true second stage community that Jake speaks of. So that allows us to, have two 30s and three 20,000 foot floor plates. Then 360 is really a very, very diverse building with retail. It can have more of a shared community space, and what we call more traditional office users would be attracted to that. A single 12,000 foot floor for an accountancy firm or law firm or something like that. It's a very diverse building. The West End Lofts was a very logical transition, given the Withington housing community that's down there now, and then the transition point. So if in general the idea of the program is acceptable, then our next stage is to advance to design development, which is the next technical stage from the architects. And that will incorporate, the tucks and tweaks and changes for orientation, access. It's much more of a detailed study. But in general, from a market standpoint, we like what the West End Lofts can offer, and we like what the 160, 260, and 360 can offer to go and have in-depth conversation with the tenant clients. And then that is where, I split off and really start honing in on the tenant clients with Jake Siegel and his team from CBRE. That's where Greg Ernie and the development team, Greg, he's got kind of a bum leg, and he can talk about, some of the next steps on, refining and then going into the technicalities of design development.
But talk a little bit about the pursuit of tenant clients. When does that start? At what point will we know that it's attracting enough people or not attracting enough people?
We will have very solid feedback in our next 90-day report. A very important thing for new projects is, we're open for business type comments, which you've expressed so far in our last couple meetings. And then we can say, well, there's general acceptance of a building of this size in this location, a building of this size in this location. There's very good chance that it's going to be fully parked and delivered within a time period. That's the type of courting we will do with the tenants over the next 90 days during that design development stage.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
So you're ready for questions? So questions or Derek, do you have a?
Yeah, I'll just do a little bit. I want to let everyone know we have taken all these numbers and I see Dave point through the ordinance. There's some discussion. It may be a little less than 80 in the CBD, so we'll have to look. We'll have to go back and look at it. But I mean, I think the discussion has been to design a project that fits within the downtown and use the PUD process to discuss that. So we'll have that discussion with the Planning Commission on the 12th. We have passed all this information along at this point to Republic Parking to review. We're very curious in the next 90 days, or hopefully in the next 30, for them to look at the numbers that are proposed as totals for parking. Not only will they support this development, are they more than we need? Are they less than what we need? What is the cost associated with the construction of these? We've had several meetings with Republic and the city's financial advisors, including Plant Moran and some other folks who represent the city, to start talking about options that deal with financing, public infrastructure. So those conversations are going on concurrently with this project as well. We do anticipate within the next 30 days or so Republic to get back to us and give us an idea of, is this the parking we need for the next 20 years? Is this only enough for a short-term solution? Is it perfect for the next 5? And we've asked them to kind of advise us on that number based on these square footages, and that's why it's important that we get some idea going forward today that these square footages make sense from a downtown standpoint, at least at this point, so we can have them start to finalize those numbers and tell us, are we in the right place both financially and from a capacity standpoint and in the parking structure. So those things are going on right now as well.
Can I add on to that? Can they do an analysis too, projected for bus rapid transit, because you technically need fewer parking spots or not as many because you have another option to choose? So is that part of the analysis too?
We asked them specifically if that was in their model, and it is. So they do calibrate their model with the bus numbers they have, and that includes the potential for future transit along Woodward. So, and we'll see what those come back as.
And you both have referenced, our reaction tonight, and I suppose that there's some importance to that, but there's a lot more. I hope you're as interested in the planning commissions and the residents and the business owners and the folks you're going to do. So I don't want it to sound like, okay, so council said, yep, continue, and now it's a totally green light.
No.
These other meetings, I want to make people aware, are important for the input that we're going to get. It's not a decision that we're going to make here tonight at this table.
No, not even close. And we and the development team felt it was important and assured council when they were here the first time that when they did bring things forward, they would bring them to council first, but then seek the input of everybody, and that's exactly what we intend to do. We think from a size, a scale, and a square footage numbers that, and we've worked with the development team quite closely, that we're real close to what is a workable and successful project in the downtown that develops those two lots and potentially unlocks some of the other areas for redevelopment. Is right parking capacity wise. We're looking at the financials, but we understand the Planning Commission is going to have a lot of opinions. And I would add this could change significantly between now and the time it's here again, depending on that input. But we think it's a good starting point.
Of course, and I think this is an excellent update, mostly because it lets us dream a little bit. I'm looking forward to the feedback from the public forums, the Planning Commission, and to see what crafts and grows out of that. But this kind of entices the interest a little more, and hopefully we'll draw more people out that they can start to conceptualize a little bit what this could mean. And certainly there's a lot of other levels in review, but I think this is exactly the kind of thing when we talk about, Derek, benchmarks, and talk about things that we want to look at, it gets people to start to conceptualize what this could mean to them personally and to the community, and feeds into those public forums and the Planning Commission. So I'm very excited about it. Thank you guys for coming here today, and I think it's going to entice more interest in the sessions to come.
Good. And obviously we're here for, all of us are here for any questions as well.
I would like for you to take a minute to just explain what a planned unit development is, because we haven't used this in a long time in our city, and this is part of the process. So I wanted to emphasize too the need for that project website or webpage or whatever to explain where we are and where we're going and how we're going to get there. But the PUD is a big part of that engine. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. In its most basic form, a planned unit development agreement is a negotiated agreement between the city and the developers of a piece of property, in this instance, the 360 development team, that provides some additional protections over the normal zoning process, the review and site plan approval process normally associated with a development. It's usually reserved for more complicated projects, projects that could run long-term, projects that have site-specific details that need to be worked out, that the existing zoning ordinance may not have the flexibility to provide the protections the city needs going forward. So as the development moves forward, it acts as a document that's actually approved, signed, and recorded that runs with the land, that sets the guidelines for the development of the property going forward. And locks that in a recordable form, and to be altered, it has to come back and be amended. It can't be changed with the sale of the property. Both ends are obligated to that. Now, it can be amended, and oftentimes are, but it helps deal with issues like phasing of construction, phasing of development, and any specific agreements as far as additional protections above and beyond what the normal zoning ordinance provides for sites that are difficult to develop like these. So we think it's the appropriate process. Ultimately, it does add additional public hearing processes to the site plan approval process. There are public hearings at both the Planning Commission, and the document is ultimately approved by City Council, so it gets both bodies more involved in the process. So we think with a site like this that includes multiple pieces of property, that having those extra protections and being able to write that into more or less a development agreement for the site is an appropriate direction when dealing with a project of this size.
Thank you.
Are there other questions of council? And then I'll give people in the audience an opportunity to ask questions now as well, because I know public comment is coming up, but some of you may be here to ask specific questions as well. But are there other questions of council?
No, I just want to make sure one thing. We talked about communication earlier, but one thing that wasn't touched on, we're in the process of updating our cable station, and I would really like to see us start using the cable station to announce these kind of meetings and discussions. So I hope that's part of the communication plan.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you for reminding.
Other comments or questions of council? If there's anyone from the public, we'll just open this up. We don't typically do it, but this is it's a big deal project, and I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask their questions or express their concerns. And so, Sherry Wells.
Of
good
course.
evening.
I've already pointed out that I'm the second house west of this Troy development, and made a few comments, and it looks like we're being listened to, which is good. And one of the things I was explained is that the parking levels are not as high as the ordinary stories, so that the ultimate finished building would be about 4 stories, which is what the Planning Commission had approved years ago when we went through this before. And one of the things that we were concerned at that time as residents is that there wouldn't be any ingress and egress on Allen, and there will not, although I much prefer to have it more in the middle of the whole building than the corner by Rosie's, which is already rather busy over there. And if they're developing and filling the space, then it sounds like they're going to be aiming more for a retail space that closes before 10 at night or something. That would be very, very nice. I was confused by the word stakeholder, because I certainly believe that our neighborhoods are stakeholders, or at least we've been feeling like we've had the stake. And so the residents, it's like almost feeling like an afterthought, and we've had to live with
No, we
this.
believe that, I can just tell you, we believe that the adjoining residents are key stakeholders, and will be invited to these meetings, and will be actively soliciting the input of those key stakeholders, including yourself.
We've been having to make enough noise to hear each other over the noise that's already there. So we've got some strong lungs that have been developing over the last 5 years. So those are the concerns I remember that we had before, and it looks like they're listened to, or they are listening tonight. All right. So this is a good start. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Anyone else from the public that, I mean, there's public comment obviously later, but if you have any specific questions while our development team is here that you'd like to ask Bob, yeah. Wow. You only get 3 minutes. Oh, maybe,
Thanks for the
maybe
opportunity,
4.
Mayor Coulter, Your Honor.
You're very
I'm
welcome.
Mr. Chris, Sherilyn. I'm pleased to see something happening here again. When Tom Barwin was our city manager, I commented to him that I am really tired of walking through that surface sea of cars that was mostly vacant to get to the bus to go to my office downtown. And I would rather zigzag around buildings. I have some concerns, though, and I appreciate the urbanity of what you're proposing, but I would submit that no matter how tall a parking structure you build, if you don't activate the streets level with retail or office space, preferably retail, then you're failing, because you still have nothing but a parking lot, and there's nothing to look at to engage you as you walk from one end of the development to the other. So what council may want to consider with the Plan Commission is to require retail capacity on the street front of both developments. If the market studies don't support that, they can be built for that, and then the opportunity to add them in later. But if it's a parking structure ramp, then it can never be added in, so that we could be shooting ourselves in the foot there. And in exchange for that, it might want to consider adding some residential on the top of the buildings to activate the roof space. Those can be stepped back from the north on Troy, from the south on Withington, so as not to shade too much of the residents on Withington. And I also very much encourage you to require a solar shading study to look at who's shaded when. It's not that hard to do. I mean, I can do it, so it can't be too hard. I would also encourage you to consider sustainability and establishing a level if you're going to be giving the parking lots away. I think we certainly have the authority to ask for something along the lines of a LEED Silver, and as a designer and LEED consultant, I know that virtually anything should be able to be done with LEED Silver without much expense added to it, and what expense is added to it is often recouped within the first 5 to 7 years. Shouldn't cost any more than 1 to 2% of the original cost of the building for design and implementation. So those are my initial comments. I look forward to working with the developers and the architects, and hi Christina, and Derek, as we move forward. I'm excited to see something happen. I just be very careful about how you do not or do activate the streetscape, because that's very important to create a city. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to talk about this development now? All right, I want to thank the team for coming in. Appreciate the update. And so maybe we see you back here in 90 days or so. Is that kind of the rough idea at this point? Awesome. Great. Thanks, folks, for coming in. All right, our next item of business is an update on the East 9 Mile project. And is that you, Lloyd? All right.
Well, as promised or threatened at the last meeting, I'm here to give you new information that's transpired between the last meeting and today.
Yes.
But before I get into the details, I wonder if council might indulge me while I give a short description of the MDOT process for the bidding of projects.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
These funds that are eligible for the project come from the federal Surface Transportation Program. They're administered by the state of Michigan, and then ultimately they're awarded by the Oakland County Federal Aid Commission. What happens is any community in Oakland County that's interested in obtaining these funds must submit an application. Those applications have a scoring system that includes things like condition of road, percentage of funding, type of road, type of traffic on the road, and other items that will award you points, And then at that point, what happens is there's a scoring that takes place, and those projects are then ranked according to the funding that's available. Our project was bid on June 6th. Our engineers had submitted the project to MDOT for approval, and the original estimate was $1.6 million to complete the project. The bids came in at $2.4 million. Actually, even a little higher than that, almost $2.5 million. And so, obviously, that was a bit of a surprise.
And when did that happen, Lloyd? When did those bids come in?
We don't know just yet, but it appears that staging the project in two stages, mostly to protect, the city's the Dream Cruise, added some substantial costs. But really, other than
but when? I'm sorry. When did the bids come in?
Oh, I apologize. June 6th.
On just the 6th. Okay.
Yeah, just a couple days ago. And so the bid tabulations weren't released till actually this afternoon, late this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
So we have not had an opportunity to thoroughly go through them, but a original review or a quick review shows that, on one hand, there are a few $100,000 that can be attributed to the additional staging. And then the other costs appear to be, there was only 3 bidders. The other costs appear to be across the board. They're high in a number of categories that ends up at about $900,000 or nearly $1 million. At this point, council's options are, and I would ask council to allow us to review the bid tabulations and converse with MDOT to better make a recommendation to council at the next meeting. We have enough time to do that. And our recommendations could range anywhere from to reject the bid, to accept the bid, to pull the water main portion out of the project, because that portion was not eligible for funding anyway, and do that, maybe try to rush that project, the water main project, through before next year and shave a few weeks off of the project, which might help it with some of these staging concerns. All that information is preliminary. We really do need some time to look at it. The bid tabulations are extensive, and so at the next council meeting, I hope to be able to provide better guidance.
If I may, through the chair, though, pulling the water main piece of it out doesn't overall, from a macro perspective, change the overall cost of the project.
No,
It's still
that
almost $1 million over
Right.
what we projected.
Absolutely, and it isn't part of the project that, although the portion in the water main is a couple $100,000 higher than expected. So.
And you mentioned one of our options could be to accept the bid. I'm not suggesting that we do that at that level, but is that even an option? Because wouldn't the state, who is paying a substantial portion of this, reject? Do they have an opportunity to reject?
Well, the reason they would, I mean, the additional cost would be the sole responsibility of the city, because
so
there is a maximum amount that the city's eligible under the program of $678,000, little over.
Gotcha. So. Okay.
But there's a component of this project, right, that can't be put off. Is that a correct statement? Like, we couldn't put off if we said it's just too excessive this year and we can't do it. We can't not do the water mains. Is that correct or no?
No, it was bid as an entirety, and it would change the cost to the prospective bidder, and then, they wouldn't have to accept that.
From a practical perspective, though, of what we can maintain in infrastructure, what do we have to do this year? You know what I mean? Forget the bid process, the functionality of what's there.
Well, I think it would be advantageous if we can complete and bid out, because we would bid it ourselves, the water main work. I think it would be advantageous because it would shave off some time, maybe as much as 6 weeks or more, which would certainly help when we rebid the original project. The other things that aren't a cost to the city, but will be some interruption to 9 Mile, would be things like the utility work by Consumers Energy is going to continue anyway. So that'll be out of the way, which we were very concerned about because some of their scheduling was going to take place very close to the Dream Cruise. And we didn't want to have excavation or work, half done where pedestrians would be, walking. So by having this delay, we will be able to complete that work. We will be able to, if council desires, to bid that water main work and I think complete it. And then that will give us a whole new set of circumstances. And, a lot of times when any bid is offered, your prices that you're going to get depend upon the environment at that time. If the bidders have a lot of work, they're going to bid the job high because it'll be profitable for them to put something else off and take the job. So it really varies from year to year.
But Lloyd, if we did the water main this year, then we ended up doing the paving next year, then 9 Mile is torn up 2 years in a row?
2 times, that's correct.
Yeah.
Although the water main portion is not as significant as it was on the West 9 job. It's a much smaller area and a simpler process.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question was asked, are we putting our infrastructure at harm by not doing anything this
Correct.
year? The answer is no.
No.
Right.
No.
Thank you.
No, it can easily wait a year or more.
And you're not looking for a decision tonight, but
No.
in 2 weeks, at the next council
Yes.
meeting, we can talk about the various options, and you'll give us more. Okay.
But
Questions? Yeah.
just to clarify, this project there's no way it could happen again for this year, no matter what changes are made to the proposal or response in RFP.
No, and not unless we accept the bid in its entirety.
Very disappointing.
The only other thing that I was concerned about, because this rarely happens, is and again, to go back on what I was talking about, the bidding environment. In fact, this bid letting alone, amongst all the projects that were let by MDOT, 1 out of 4 came in at least 10% or more higher than originally estimated. And those are not just our engineers' estimates. MDOT also has in-house people when they review the bidding documents to determine if it looks like it's in the ballpark. And
But I think the frustrating part is this is well beyond 10%. So why were the estimates so far off of what the actual bids came off of? Environmental, maybe we misjudged the environmental read? I don't know.
No, again, when the initial review of the bid tabulation, it shows that it's across the board.
But for you to really understand what it is, you need time. You need the next couple of weeks to really
We do. The
deep
engineers
dive.
didn't receive it till almost 4 o'clock. We checked the site and got it maybe an hour sooner than that. And so we had an opportunity to go through and highlight some things. But certainly one thing that other than the additional mobilization charges and related to having a project that's in 2 stages was simply the fact that, the Dream Cruise and that scheduling. But other than that, I mean, that's a few $100,000. Other than that, it's across the board. There's no specific item that you can point to that would be the reason why.
So,
Speaking.
I'm sorry, Greg.
No, go ahead.
No, so when can we expect, because I want to hear more about this, about why we were so far off the estimate.
I will ask the engineer who prepared the bidding documents to be here at the next meeting.
All right, that'd be great, thank you.
The only thing that I was concerned about, and it took a couple of phone calls today to try to get an answer on, was, would we be automatically eligible for these funds if we put it off and bid it again?
Yeah.
And I wasn't given a definitive answer, but with high certainty, the funds will still remain ours. My concern was that the funds would be returned to the county, and then we'd have to submit the process all over again. But I was assured today that that is not likely.
Okay. That was one of my questions. My other one was, a lot of people were concerned that the DIY festival was canceled because this project was planned by the state, not by the city. Has there been any communication with with the promoters of the event as to whether or not they are interested in?
I haven't spoke to them directly, but I have been party to emails and know that staff has had active conversations. I know Derek, Christina, have had face-to-face meetings and discussed, possibilities of even trying to do the event again this year. But from the emails that I read, I understand that it's just not possible for him to continue with the event this year. And I assure you, at least, on our end, we're going to try to do everything possible to, if we can shorten this project up, to get it done without impacting that event. But we just don't know at this time.
Sure.
I've also spoken with Chris Johnson, the owner of the DIY, and verified that it is not possible to ramp up planning to deliver the type of festival that we've all come to expect by now. So.
Well, they've lost 2 months, basically, of planning.
All right, other questions? Thanks, Lloyd. Appreciate
Thank
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And just quickly, knowing that we still don't have complete answers yet as to how we're going to be proceeding, we do want to continue to push out there to encourage both residents and businesses and property owners to get on our email distribution list, which will then also allow them the opportunity to be a part of the text messaging program for construction alerts. So to do that quickly and easily, you can do it from your phone and just text Downtown Ferndale, all one word together, to 22828. And that will get you started on that email list, and then we'll go from there. So we'll keep people up to date and informed, not only through emails, but also on FerndaleMoves.com, so people can check out that website as well. And then we'll be posting on our Facebook page at Downtown Ferndale. Thank you.
Great. Good reminder. Thank you. All right, that concludes our presentations. Next item of business is call to audience. I appreciate everyone who's patient who waited for the first 70 minutes of the meeting to get here, but now call to audience is your opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes on any subject that you would like that's not on the remainder of the agenda, because you can talk to that when we get there. Give us your name and your address, and the floor is yours. Jeannie Davis.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Davis, and I'm wearing the Ferndale Art Commission hat this evening. And this Saturday, after the Trunk and Treasure Show in the Ferndale City Hall parking lot, we will be having our coming out party. So the Art Commission is coming out. We're putting the van back together, and it'll be from, wait, I forget. It'll be from 3 to 5:30. Good thing I brought this. And it'll be in the alley in back of Dino's. Dino's has graciously allowed us to use that space. You'll come and you'll get munchies, and you can give us your opinion on what you would like to see the Art Commission do. And you can give us some feedback. So we would really love to have people come, and I'm sure that everybody up there is going to come.
So we're glad you're back together, too. So
yes, the band, I feel like one of the Blues Brothers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening? Evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin Long, Ferndale resident and attorney, but I'm wearing a different hat tonight. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. I'm starting a cat shelter here in Ferndale, and after much debate, and much infighting, we have named it the Ferndale Cat Shelter. So, there will be no confusion about what we do. It'll be a no-kill shelter here in Ferndale. We are a nonprofit. We'll apply for 501c3 status. So it'll be a sanctuary for cats that aren't adopted, but we will try to find homes for cats that we can. And we will also be doing trap, neuter, release here in Ferndale. So a number of us took training. We're going to run the spay and neuter through All About Animals in Warren. So I'm here to sort of the temporary face of the Ferndale Cat Shelter. I'll try to get someone more attractive next time, but you're stuck with me right now. So I just wanted to put the name out there for some of the council members that I have not met, and to the audience, if there's anybody who wants to be involved, from volunteering in our shelter space once we actually get space to hanging out at our fundraisers, we could use all the help we could get. Thank you very much.
And how can they do that? Do you have a Facebook page yet?
Yeah, actually, the Facebook page is Ferndale Cat Shelter, so follow us on Facebook. I put a lot of stuff up there about, what's going on, some funny pictures of cats, obviously, you kind of have to do that, but also about our fundraisers and what we're doing. So the core team is having a meeting this Thursday at Rosie's, so then after we have that meeting, we'll have a better idea of, what we're going to do for fundraisers, and I'm looking at space on Wednesday with Rick Axe. Hopefully we can find a space here in Ferndale. Of the 6 places I sent, 3 of them are already gone, so hopefully there's the perfect place that I look at on Wednesday, but we're really trying to find a space as soon as possible. So thank you very much.
Ben, thank you. Christina.
One more time tonight. So on June 19th, we are having the Art of the Cocktail, which is our fundraiser for public art. We invite everybody to come out for it. It should be a really good time. You will be able to vote on the official cocktail of Ferndale. And what we are doing is we're serving up craft cocktails from 9 different bartenders from downtown Ferndale businesses, who will be given basically a basket of goodies to try to craft up what they want to serve people, and you'll be able to taste and make your votes. It is $40 a person, and tickets can be bought online through PayPal by going to downtownferndale.com, or you can come into our office. We do have them available at our office as well, and we're located at 149 West 9 Mile Road. So it's June 19th. It's from 6 to 10 p.m. It is located at M Brew, which is the newest spot that will be opening up here in downtown Ferndale on Vester Street. So right next to Valentine Distilling Company, who is also one of the sponsors and providing the beverages. Thank you.
And that will be before their official grand opening, right? So this will be a sneak peek preview of the new venue.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly. Should be a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you. Huh?
I have tickets.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Paul Kish, 707 West Hazelhurst. On May 29th, 2014, I asked to meet with a code enforcement officer in my backyard. The grass at 658 West Marshall was 2.5 feet tall. That's the vacant house behind me. That house, there was a building permit pulled on that sometime early last year. That house is still wrapped in Tyvek. That should have been completed. I did ask the code enforcement officer to write a notice of violation on the dead tree in the neighbor's yard west of mine. It's 30 foot tall. It's been dead for 3 years. He stated to me that there was not a law that he could cite on that tree. Now, I was written a notice of violation back in 2003 for a dead tree to be removed, failure to move, and that spent 4 days in court. Your city attorney prosecuted me with that. Why is there a difference there?
Don't know, sir. I can have our staff look into it. Don't know.
Last but not least, I need copies of the photographs that the code enforcement officer took of the house behind me and the building permit that was pulled on that house. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening? Yes, step right on up.
Hi,
Good evening.
everybody. My name's Jamie D'Angelo. I own the New Way Bar at 23130 Woodward. And I bought it about a year ago, and I'm just here to tell you how nice it's been doing business here in Ferndale. Things are going great, and everybody at the city has been a big help. The neighbors have been helpful, and things are going good.
Great.
And that's
What's new at the New Way?
I got the patio in this spring, and that's really the big news was the patio. So
great.
that's been a big help. The customers have really taken to that. So it's going good, and that's all. Just wanted to check in.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for everything. It's a great city to do business in.
Thank you for coming by. Good to see you.
Happy anniversary.
Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is the consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless someone pulls an item from the consent agenda. Let me read it now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular and special meeting held May 27, 2014. Item B is the approval to reallocate $22,000 from account number 101-371-814, Specialty Consulting Services, to account number 101-296-854, Computer Operations, for the purpose of upgrading several priority workstations from Windows XP to Windows 7. C is the approval to purchase and install 20 workstations from Vision Networking Solutions, LLC, in the amount of $22,000 from the general fund, 5 workstations in the amount of $6,630.82 from the Water and Sewer Fund, and 3 workstations from the Auto Parking Fund in the amount of $2,652.33, as submitted by our Chief Innovation Officer. Item D is the approval of listed accounts to be charged as a lien against the respective properties and to be collected as special assessments with the July 1st, 2014 tax roll. Item E is the approval to fill 4 Public Works Grade 1 positions as submitted by our Human Resources Director. Item F is the adoption of a resolution to participate in the Oakland County Hazard Mitigation Plan as submitted by our Fire Chief. Item G is the adoption of a resolution urging the state legislature to repeal the Fireworks Safety Act. Item H is a resolution urging DTE Energy to be required to expedite the transition from burning polluting coal to renewable sources of energy, included but not limited to solar, wind, wave, geothermal, and hydroelectric, and that the state of Michigan increase the Michigan Renewable Energy Standard to 25% by 2025, as submitted by Councilwoman Piana. Item I is the adoption of a resolution indicating Ferndale's intent to participate in Oakland County's Community Development Block Grant Program for the next 3 years, and to direct the city clerk to forward a certified copy of the resolution to the county before the June 20th, 2014 deadline. And finally, approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the city manager's office, subject to the review of the Council Finance Committee. What is the will of council this evening?
I would move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Piana. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda, either by council or by members of the public?
I have one, 6F, on page 117. It says along the tracks in the north central to southwest section, it should be southeast. Our train goes from the north central to the southeast, not the southwest. (117)
He's just showing off that he read all the way to page 117.
I only read the Ferndale part. I didn't read every other city.
See, I read it as southwest of the actual tracks, not the southwest quadrant of the city, but you're probably right. You read it closer than I did.
What do you think, Chief? Is that a mistake?
Maybe I read it wrong.
No, you're probably right.
Yeah.
So we'll correct that to say southeast. Very good. Any other discussions on the consent agenda? All right, Sherilyn, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda as amended is adopted. Regular agenda. Item A is a consideration of a resolution supporting the locally preferred alternative identified in the Woodward Alternatives Analysis Plan. Who's introducing that item this evening? Is that
I can.
Councilwoman?
Sure.
Yeah, you could do that.
We are nearing the end of our 2.5-year project for the Woodward Alternative Analysis, and tonight I've asked LSL Planning and, I never say it right, Parsons Brinkerhoff, the two leading project consultants on the Woodward Alternative Analysis, to come and speak about the local preferred alternative, the process, how we got here, and what's going to happen next. So I welcome to the podium Sharmila and Brad to walk us through the preferred alternative identified for Ferndale, 8 Mile, Woodward.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I wanted to, we had strong participation from City of Ferndale throughout the process, so I just wanted to first of all thank you. A lot of familiar faces. I remember folks from the public meetings, and Melanie's been an avid supporter of the project and keeping us on check. So to just give you a brief background on where we are, it's a planning study. We do not have all the design details finalized at this process, very much along the lines of the 360 LLC present the plan that you saw. It's in the very same vein. So this rapid transit project came out of the Woodward Light Rail post-planning process, and Melanie and others from South Oakland communities were very involved in helping with the grant and putting this plan forward. With that, SEMCOG has taken this project on since July of 2012, so we are about not quite 2 years, but coming up on 2 years, and by the time we would be in July, we would have the LPA report, the locally preferred alternatives report, finalized. So wanted to talk a little bit about how we came to this point, the evaluation process, how the criteria we used, the mode we selected, bus rapid transit. What is it? A lot of you are familiar with it, but some of you may not, so we're going to show some basic graphics and talk about it. And then how it affects Ferndale, what exactly it means at this point in planning, which is absolutely going to be subject to further studies and input into the environmental review process. But want to talk about it a little bit. Brad's going to talk about that part, the key issues, stations, cross-sections, and some of these things that are going to be discussed in the next phase. So we talk about the mode. That's essentially we looked at 3 rapid transit mode: express bus, bus rapid transit, and light rail transit. We selected bus rapid transit based on a number of criteria, which we are going to talk about in the next slide. And then today's presentation mostly focuses on 3 components: the stations, the alignment, and the cross-sections. So in looking at how we selected BRT, we received that question a lot at the public meetings and all of the other community meetings that we went to. We looked at the feasibility, the process of implementation, how it's going to be, whether it's going to be possible to implement a rapid transit mode in Southeast Michigan. And this is essentially the champion corridor. If Woodward has the first major rapid transit for commuter transportation gets built, then that would be sort of the stepping stone. Based on that, the regional BRT plan could be implemented. So we looked at ridership, we looked at cost, at both capital and operating cost of the new system. We looked at economic development options. It was very encouraging today to hear about your PUD plan. I mean, a lot of the communities are putting those type of plans in place, but definitely transit-oriented development, density building as part of that process. Social equity, FTA places a lot of importance on equity considerations, especially environmental justice, and that feeds into the ridership criteria as well. So we looked at that, intermodal connections, how it connects to stations and terminals and existing transfer points. That was taken into consideration. And legibility is essentially, in this context, sort of how the system is going to be identified. So if we built BRT along Woodward, how people would be able to navigate and easily find both the station and the system. So this is the Bus Rapid Transit typical vehicle. It's very similar to, this is actually a little bit higher end than what Cleveland has in place. They have about a 10-mile, downtown Cleveland has about a 10-point, a little over 10-mile BRT system in downtown Cleveland called Helpline. And we took our steering committee members, I think Derek, you went, right? You didn't go. Melanie did. It was a group of 35, so it's easy to forget one.
You have palm trees in Cleveland?
No, this is that is not from Cleveland. That is actually
really transformed.
Wow, that's great.
So we bring people in, change the weather, all that stuff. So this is kind of a higher end BRT system that you see here. And this is from the LA Goldmax. This is from Cleveland, very similar to what you may see here with probably a higher level fare media. The station, you get a kind of a sense of what it could potentially look like. Off-board fare collection, we talk a little bit about the BRT amenities. I think most of you have attended public meetings and have seen this basic feature, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Level boarding, I think that is a big feature that makes it similar to, or just sort of you can compare to rail, and I think that's a very attractive feature. ADA accessible. It's a big part of why FT is pushing it. It really makes things better for physically challenged and others. Dedicated lanes, that's a major part of what makes BRT successful, especially if you are to build for commuter transportation and for longer lead corridors that have more than 15 miles or more. Using dedicated lanes makes it more successful. So transit signal priority, among other technologies in fare integration, fare collection, transit signal priority is perhaps one of the most important features that we could have to give BRT the priority it would need to beat travel time, to give the travel time advantage. Some of the station design, you can see that it could be, depending on the regional commitment, it could really look like rail, or it could be a little bit downscaled, and it could really vary based on the regional priorities. For purpose of this project, we are looking at one of the enhanced station design options. We are not there yet, but that's our goal. These are some of the basic benefits of BRT. I'm not going to waste time on this, but what I would like to highlight that in addition to transportation opportunities along this corridor, connecting residents with job opportunities and providing alternative transportation choices is very important. And I think that essentially drove our study's purpose and need. Purpose and need is the document, basically the foundation that this planning study is built on, and FTA is going to review closely with the LPA. With that, just wanted to give you a sense of, this is a busy slide, hopefully you can get it, that it's about 27-mile long corridor. It serves about 11 municipalities. We are proposing about 26 stations at this point. About 13 miles, about half of it, we are expecting that it's going to be median center-based BRT. It's all subject to further design and further studies. 8.5 mile, we're saying it's going to be median age, and about 5.5, smaller portion of it, where it's going to be edge running or mixed in traffic.
How does it work with the M1 rail?
We're going to come to that.
Okay.
I'm going to have Brad talk about the cross sections, and then we're going to go back to, I can actually do that before that even. So, no, you go on, talk about it.
No, I'm not trying to disrupt your presentation.
And ask questions at any time, but sometimes the slides will be answering the questions as we move on. But when we get done, jot the question down and make sure if we don't cover it, you ask.
Okay.
I'm Brad Strader. I'm with LSL Planning. I'm out of our Royal Oak office, and we are the planning arm of SafeBuild, who the city uses to help you with some of your building inspections. And so we're a sub-consultant of Parsons Brinckerhoff, and our role has been primarily working with the Oakland County communities since we've worked with so many of them. And as we went through the workshops and working with the steering committee, we've met with other boards and commissions and planning commissions and DDAs and chambers up and down the corridor and your staff. We've identified on these slides some of the key issues we heard from all those workshops and events by community. So there was some consistency along the corridor. The number one thing we heard throughout was to make it rapid. So different communities would hear different things. Pontiac would say, make sure it comes all the way up to Pontiac. Don't stop in Ferndale or Birmingham, get up to Pontiac. Detroit had different issues. Every community had issues. Some were pretty consistent, some were unique. Some of the things we heard in Ferndale were dealing with the median. The beauty of the median, it's a wide median. Can we retain some of the characteristics of the median? That was important in Ferndale, in Berkeley, in Royal Oak, in Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Bloomfield Township. So pretty much that was a common comment in Oakland County. And we did different cross sections that affect the median, and kind of the way we would deal with the median is different in each community. The benefit in Ferndale is, compared to those other communities I mentioned, your median is wider. So the traffic volumes, so we have to balance everything, the traffic operations and safety with getting ridership and the bus rapid transit, or as we heard at all our Oakland County meetings, call it rapid transit, don't call it bus rapid transit. So have a vehicle that doesn't look like a bus, more like the one in Vegas that Sharmila showed. So that was one of the things to keep in mind, is the traffic volumes are less in Ferndale than you are to the north. You're about 43,000 vehicles a day, 68,000 vehicles a day on the north side of 696 up to about 13 Mile. Then they go down again north of Birmingham, and the median is wider, so we have a little bit more flexibility. Another issue we heard is the connectivity to the north, getting across the expanse of I-696, and we've talked about some things to maybe cap 696 just on the north side to get access to a transit station. It's beyond what this project can really deal with. Is, you know, like in Pleasant Ridge and Royal Oak, they said, can we fill in the ditch? And you guys have talked about that here in the past. That's sort of beyond. We've documented that that's something that came up in our public workshops, but we are looking at least trying to make 696 and Woodward more accessible on the north side. And then we heard similar things, especially from Derek at 8 Mile, the bridge at 8 Mile. And if we have a station on the south side of 8 Mile, how do people in Ferndale get to that station? And are there ways to make that at least more walkable or connection? Again, we have to be cost competitive with other bus rapid transit projects that are going after this funding, so we can't deal with big projects that are really not related to transit like that, but we're acknowledging anything we can do to make the stations more accessible should be considered.
So just add to that quickly. You first.
I was just going to say on that point, so are these issues, these are still unresolved issues?
These will be issues that we note in the locally preferred alternative, that as the project moves forward, these are issues that came up. And the next step will be the environmental assessment and design, to say as these come up, these need to be addressed in the design or environmental assessment. And it may be that this project will not resolve that matter, but at least we'll have like a checklist of things to make sure we've responded to them.
And I think another purpose of that, to have this list, it's going to provide sort of a guide to the environmental review process. These are some of the areas you need to review carefully. On the other hand, I mean, there may be 1 or 2 items on the list that won't be addressed within the context of this study, but the communities could come together and probably come up with other sources of funding or work with SEMCOG or other agencies, MDOT, to be able to kind of take that further and have a companion project to be alongside moving forward.
A couple other things we heard in Ferndale and Pleasant Ridge dealt with the stations. So right now we're showing, to keep it rapid, we have stations generally at the mile roads. And I think we have a slide showing that. The slide presentation changes each time, so I'm not sure all what slides we have tonight. But the idea was a station somewhere in the vicinity of 9 Mile. So at this phase, we're just showing a dot on a map, and the details we'll be looking at. Generally, the dot on the map means maybe 3 to 4 blocks north or south. When we look at traffic operations, how to get people across the street. But the idea was that the 9 Mile station would likely be, our at least feeling now is on the north side of 9 Mile to also serve Pleasant Ridge. There's a possibility of adding another station to serve Pleasant Ridge, but when we add a station, we're adding 40 seconds more of travel time, and every time we add a station, we start to lose ridership, and it's not as rapid. So the first cut is to keep the stations to a minimum, and if we build up ridership and we have new development, build up ESTRA, you can add stations in the future. A couple other things here. We talked about the 8 Mile already, and a key thing from your representatives on this, in the steering committee when we've had meetings was, if we're going to have rapid transit have a dedicated lane, it should not be a transition of a travel lane, a traffic lane, into a transit lane. Because if there is going to be any give and take or flexibility in converting a lane to another purpose, it would be to support the Complete Streets initiative to have separated bikeways or two-way bikeways. So what we've looked at the cross-section on the drawing here is that the rapid transit would run in the center of the median in Ferndale. And that is the same cross-section we're promoting all the way up to Birmingham. And then somewhere in the Birmingham area, it would go out to be running on the edge of the median and then would not have an exclusive lane as we move north into Bloomfield Hills and Bloomfield Township, where the volumes are lower and the speeds are higher. So we don't need an exclusive lane.
And there's no proposed station.
And a potential station at Long Lake, but we don't have as many stations when we get into Bloomfield because there's just not a lot of ridership potential today. So one of the questions that has come up with the center median is how does it work with the Michigan lefts? No other transit project has ever had to deal with the Michigan lefts. So this is treading on new territory, although we worked on the CATA project in East Lansing, and Lansing dealing with somewhat the same thing. And one of the reasons we're in the center, as Sharmila said, center was the preferred option when we can do it because it's safer. You get pedestrians across the street. You can build one station to serve travel in both ways. When we're in the right lane, like buses, we get interrupted by people in and out of the driveways and cross streets and the buses that are likely going to continue to run and have more frequent stops. So when we go in the center of the median, we can best deal with the Michigan indirect left turns. We'll probably have to close some and consolidate some to have fewer conflict points, but this couple of drawings here shows how it would work. So as the rapid transit vehicle is coming, and Sharmila mentioned the signal preemption, it would, if the signal was about to change to amber and then red, it would keep it green. So the rapid transit would continue. If it's red, it would kind of jump start it. It wouldn't change it to green, but it would cycle so the cycle length would be shorter. So it is going to be a lot of changes to the signal technology. But the idea would be as a rapid transit vehicle is approaching the crossover, vehicles would be stopped at a new red light. And this way then they would continue across at a 90-degree angle. When it's clear, they would have a green. They'd have a signal on the other side. And also, if you can see faintly with this pedestrian crossing, if we had a station there where the signal is, that would give people a signalized crossing to get across Woodward. So this would probably bend out around a station. The station might be on either edge or in the center of the median. And so pedestrians would cross while the traffic is stopped for the rapid transit vehicle. So we would link up the pedestrian crossing with the rapid transit. So it's a fairly sophisticated signal system, but that would be the concept. The reason we chose that is in Birmingham, there's some feeling that maybe we would be at the edge of the median, and the reason that that's not as preferred, as you can see on this, if you're that orange car, one of these orange cars in the center lane, you have to wait for the rapid transit vehicle to go by, and you've got to cross over across the rapid transit lane and then cross the median. So it can work. It's not as desirable. It has more conflicts, potential for crashes. So we might have to do something like that in a few locations, but we're trying to keep the transit.
And why are you moving to the median edge in Birmingham?
Moving to the median edge in Birmingham because we have to transition to get to the outer edge as we move into Bloomfield Hills and Bloomfield Township primarily.
Gotcha.
Birmingham has also got a more narrow median, but there's a difference of opinion on whether they would want to transition an existing traffic lane to transit that runs on the edge, or to put the rapid transit in the middle of the median. So there's those that favor keeping it aesthetic and keeping the rapid transit on the edge and saying we can just get rid of a travel lane, and others on the city commission and planning board, they're saying we think our volumes are too high to be able to convert a traffic lane to transit, and let's put it in the middle where it makes the most sense in terms of safety and rapid speed. So Birmingham has not yet given it a position. So right now in the locally preferred alternative, we're saying somewhere in Birmingham we'd have to transition as we go into Bloomfield, and where we transition will have to be determined in the next phase. It's a good question.
And forgive me, how do emergency vehicles work in this model?
Emergency vehicles would work through the crossovers just as they do today. So it would be very similar to how they travel through a signalized crossing. But it's likely there will not be any crossings that are not signalized. Okay. So that would be one change and we've had the police chief in Berkeley and police chief in Bloomfield Hills. One of the things we've noted on our list, and you're just getting a snippet tonight, is the next phase we need to really involve all the public safety and first responders in the process, especially signalization and understanding how this works. And so that's another good question.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then this series just shows how it would work in the edge running. And so that's kind of where we are. Again, the station at 9 Mile. That's kind of the planned cross-section. And the next phase, as Sharmila mentioned, where are we today? So the locally preferred alternative, which was endorsed by our steering committee, is just saying we've all worked together. If I was going to summarize, we worked together. There's support in Oakland County and in Detroit and Wayne County for the rapid transit project. We want to move on to the next phase. We know that there's still details to be determined. And the next, we're supporting this concept of a rapid transit with the vehicles generally running in the center of the median where practical, with stations about a mile apart, with more study to look at the exact station location, more detailed modeling of ridership, and especially the modeling of the conflicts between traffic and the transit so we can find the best placement for the station. And then all those comments or items we listed earlier would be documented as part of the environmental assessment.
And I think just to add to this is that we have looked at traffic operational analysis, but mostly focused at the intersection level. What we would do in the environmental review is take that and do more corridor simulation, so we understand where the choke points would be on a kind of more corridor level, and that's where we bring in all the conflicts and emergency responders and everything else into the mix.
Yeah, the tricky thing when we've done our broader modeling, we can reduce a lane in a lot of places or have transit run in the center, and traffic operations, there's extra capacity along a lot of Woodward, but we have some bottleneck spots, like 13 Mile. When we get up into the Bloomfields, if you reduce a lane on Woodward fine, but the cross streets would really start to back up, and they already do at Corton and Long Lake, and so that has to be considered. So we do more detailed modeling at those key intersections using software called VSIM. You might have seen it where you can actually see sort of the animation. It'll show you, if you do this, here's the backup of cars in the morning and evening. So that level of traffic modeling would come next, and working with MDOT and the Road Commission. So far, the road agencies have been very supportive to move the project forward.
Including MDOT. MDOT's been very supportive and wants the center running, and not quite the location of the center, but center running that's going to give speed to the BRT.
Great. Okay, other questions of council?
I do. I believe it's page 18 of your slide. It could be 16. It's the one with the 8 to 10 mile or 8 to 11 mile, the cross section, and then the key issues page. Yep, that's the page. If I heard you correctly, we were not going to be reducing, or the plan is not to reduce the number of lanes on Woodward. Currently, there's 4 traffic lanes, and in each direction. And based on the conversation, there's no plan to reduce that. However, this display shows that it is being reduced. So,
that comes from our involvement in the Woodward Complete Streets too. Part of the reason is staff, at least I have, and I won't speak for everybody, is so supportive of the transit running through the median or taking up median, whether it's edge or center, is because we believe MDOT is always going to hold firm to 3 travel lanes in each direction. We would like to reserve the ability to, as part of the Complete Streets projects, take the curbside lanes from Woodward and expand our sidewalks. So what you see on there is you see the green paint to emphasize that those would be cycle tracks in the future. Now, I don't believe those will be built as part of the transit project, but we want this locally preferred alternative to recognize as a starting point that that's our desire, and I'll let Councilwoman Piana speak to it as well because she's been a big part of it. But we believe that we'd like to keep the ability to keep those curbside lanes available for future transition into pedestrian and bicycle space and not take those lanes away now because if we give them to transit, I don't think we'll get them back for the pedestrian space later. I mean, MDOT hasn't said that absolutely, but I don't think they're going to go to 2 lanes in each direction on Woodward. The AT, Brad can speak to it, the traffic doesn't support it. I don't think we would ever be able to get those lanes back in the future.
Okay.
So that's the reason.
Okay, so according to my calculations, we're saying that there is 76 feet of median?
Correct.
Really?
It's very wide.
Very wide.
It is.
Must be because we have so many Michigan lefts that it never looks that wide.
I think in Royal Oak it drops, is it 52?
52 and 46.
46, it narrows down. So we can take 24 for the 2 transit lanes and still leave a sizable amount on either side for landscaping and replanting. either as part of the project or after the project and as years go on. That still leaves us 26. Yeah, 26 feet on either side of those 12-foot lanes. So we'll still have substantial room for planning.
Yeah, one of the challenges when we get up to Berkeley and Royal Oak is if this cross-section you see here, because their medians are narrower, we would only end up with about a 12-foot green strip on either side. And so what they're talking about in Berkeley and Royal Oak is the option of converting a current traffic lane to a wider median there, so that the end result would look more like this slide with Ferndale. So that in their case, if there is conversion of a traffic lane, it would be to more green space instead of a bikeway or transit lane.
Yeah, I'm all for maintaining green space on Woodward.
So I just wanted to let council and everybody to know this has been a process for me to support center running BRT. Clearly, I was not for it when we embarked on this 2.5-year journey, mostly because the city has invested so much in beautifying our median. And when it's the only thing you can really control in terms of making it look better for businesses and for people who are visiting Ferndale, because the streets are owned by MDOT, it just was a hard pill to swallow to say we're going to remove our investment for bus rapid transit. And so I've had since I've been so close to this project, I've had a very long time to process my change over to completely supporting center running BRT. Because at the end of the day, I feel like Derek and I have worked very well with PB and LSL to make sure the needs of the community and the businesses are met in terms of redesigning the streetscape, loud and clear, wider sidewalks, cycle tracks, improved pedestrian safety, and I think this cross-section you see here really kind of does that. I am a little concerned about how we're going to replace the 350 trees that are in our median, because our DPW director did do a tree analysis, and I mean it's a little mini park in our median. So how do we deal with the loss of trees, relocation of trees, and replanting of trees throughout this process? But that's down the road as part of the next 2 phases of this project. And another reason I'm supporting it is because there is something called the gold standard of BRT. It's an international sort of evaluation tool to evaluate world-class BRT systems across the world, and it's really gold, silver, and bronze. And the Healthline in Cleveland is a silver, and I envision gold for our Metro Detroit region because we need to leapfrog over where we have now and be best in class globally. And I think center running as part of these gold standards, which you can go online and read at the Institute of Transportation and Development Policy. And so when I learned of those standards, that's sort of when I flipped. But I also our number one goal is to make this system fast, as rapid as possible. And that's sort of the give and take and compromise that all of the cities have had to work with this whole project to make sure we achieve that end, but also achieve the results you want for your community in terms of changing the streets. And so with that said, our concerns I feel are really articulated well in the resolution, and that is basically what I'm calling drop the bridge. So drop the bridge to encourage economic development along that corridor, increase pedestrian safety and walkability, and better connect Ferndale residents to any 8-mile transit stop that is developed there. So I think that's important to do that, as well as support our neighboring community, Pleasant Ridge, in capping the gap, and that is at the zoo, capping the highway to improve pedestrian safety again, and make better transit stops there because it's all janky. That's the better word, it's all janky. But the hole in the highway is huge and it's hard to design around. And so that will be 2 projects and a coalition that I think we're going to need to build in order to find funding to make those projects happen when in tandem when BRT is starting to be built. So I'm very, very happy that you you two came tonight to sort of the conclusion almost. We're almost near the conclusion, but to show where we are and where we're going to go for the next stage after the RTA does their magic. Do you want to explain what happens next? Is that on your slide too?
There is not, but let me see.
Well, let's finish up with questions before
sorry.
we get to next steps or what happens next.
Anybody else?
Are there other questions or
No, I'm
comments?
fine. I think this is great. Thank you.
Just one other thing. You had mentioned that the possibility of the 9 Mile station being up to 3 or 4 blocks north of 9 to accommodate Pleasant Ridge, and to me that doesn't work. It needs to be closer to 9 Mile because I understand the desire to help pick up some Pleasant Ridge people, but you're going to lose, I think, more than you would gain there. So I would just encourage you
That is the prevailing thought.
to do that as close to
We don't
9
want to go too
Mile
far. We
as
probably need
possible.
to get away from the 9 Mile turnarounds, so it'll be probably just north of the 9 Mile turnarounds.
Right, okay.
I mean, this is clearly a dense urban city center here along Woodward. It's one of the key city centers, and we understand that it needs to be near 9 Mile.
Thank you.
As close to 9 Mile as possible, according to
I think that's true. Yeah, and maybe there's another way to accommodate our friends in Pleasant Ridge, but I don't think what you would gain in the few that walk down, you would lose in the density of people from downtown, so. Christina? Yeah.
I was just going to comment towards that because I know that was my initial reaction as well. But I think also to look at it at a flip side is on a possible opportunity to create that crossover where we need one a little bit further north between Camborne and 9 Mile Road. It's something that we have been leveraging and trying to push MDOT for years to try to get something at that Breckenridge, Withington area for crossing over because we have a significant amount of pedestrian traffic that already does that. So I think we have to look at some of these things as how can we continue to push and leverage for all of what we would like to achieve within that district area. And I also would highly encourage that we start working now with our representatives and our senators and so forth to really start talking about the overall change that we need along Woodward Avenue, not just BRT, but also the complete streets component, because as a DDA, we feel very strongly that if we don't have that complete streets component, then we have lost. We have not gained fully what we could have.
I really appreciate you saying that because that is definitely something I will not support is BRT, no complete streets. They have to be done in tandem in order to make this project work, and so.
I agree with you.
And Parsons Brinkerhoff is leading the Complete Streets project as well.
Yes, so we have,
Right.
we have support partners.
Right. But and I hear what you're saying, Christina. Camborne strikes me as too far north. That's 3 blocks. I'm not a planner. I'm just telling you
It's all
my
about
opinion.
ridership, Mayor. So the topic of next steps, we are working on, as Melanie mentioned, we are working on, close to the conclusion, we're working on the LPA document, the document that would actually support this locally preferred option, kind of substantiate all the analysis. And we hope to at least create a draft by end of June, and then that goes to the steering committee, which Melanie and Derek are part of. And then it goes to, in July it's going to be in review, and then we will submit the document to RTA and then FTA. So that's this phase, and then once FTA reviews that, then it goes on to the next phase. When the LPA is reviewed and blessed, it's not quite approved by FTA, but it's blessed, and then it goes into the environmental review phase where we analyze all the impacts.
It is to have that environmental assessment and the design ready, and a cost and everything else ready by the time the RTA would go out to the millage vote to support the regional transit system.
In 2016.
And that's the current plan, right? 2016 for a millage vote?
Yes. And I guess how the environmental review fits into this, that's what Melanie was trying to get me to comment on. As things stand, the way I understand with RTA CEO, pending his approval of his full package or position, then once he is fully settled in his position, he would be reviewing the project. And along with his board, and would be the general blessing of sorts that would move things forward. And with that, the environmental review of something of this magnitude would typically take 2 years, but in this case, In this case, given the level of analysis that we've already done, FTA feels that it could be done in,
She said 9 months.
she said 9 months, which is extremely optimistic. We feel it's going to be close to 1 year, a little bit over, and that would take us to that time frame where this is going to be going to the millage.
We appreciate you giving us the time.
Is there anyone from the public, because this is on the agenda now, is there anyone from the public that would like to address this item? Yeah, please.
John Heiberg,
Yep.
517 East Saratoga. Do I understand that there's a problem with the transition at 11 Mile Road or over the 8 Mile transition, the bridge and then the valley, or is that where, just so I'm clear on that?
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot to cover. The main issue with 11 Mile, the transit vehicle would stay above the bridge, so for the transit, there's not really a transition. It's just that Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale and some of the other communities would like to get rid of the ditch or cover it, and that's not really part of our project, but we would stay above. Where we do have difficulties on the north side of 696, we have the zoo on one side, downtown Royal Oak on the other side, potentially a park and ride lot, and it's very difficult for pedestrians to get across. So that's the part where we would look to have a cap or something along Woodward and get a better pedestrian. It would go above
the surface street, and then on the 8 Mile part, is that just going
8 Mile would go around the bridge.
Okay, all right.
Yep. And the other issue on 696 is if you're eastbound in 696 and you come off the ramp now, and it's kind of a mad dash for all the movements, but some people get in the left couple lanes and go left onto Woodward and then left at the service. We would have to make some changes there because often that all blocks up and the rapid transit vehicle has to be able to get through there. So likely some of those movements won't be allowed when it's redesigned. So that gives us another opportunity to make some subtle changes there as we redesign that interchange area.
Good question. Yep. All right, thank you. So a motion would be in order because there's a resolution in your packet.
Yes, there's a resolution that just expresses general support for the LPA as it currently stands, and also expresses our concerns about the 8 Mile Woodward Bridge and the stations between 8 and 9 Mile roads. So
I make a motion that the Ferndale City Council adopts the attached resolution supporting the locally preferred alternative identified in the Woodward Alternatives Analysis Plan.
I second.
All right, moved by Pollock and supported by Piana.
I did want to mention that the city of Berkeley already had their presentation and passed a resolution in support, so I thank them for drafting our resolution for us.
Always good to steal other folks' work. There you go. Any final discussions on this item? Sherilyn, would you call the roll, please?
Council members, Piana.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That resolution is adopted. Thank you very much for coming and presenting tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right, item B would be the consideration of district court and police department renovations cost adjustments. And April, is that you?
Yes. As you know, we've been working on the project that is nearing completion of the courts and police renovation project. We have a series of 2 amendments. We have one this council meeting, and we'll finish the final report at the next council meeting. As you know, our original quote from the Daly Company was for $1.9 million, just under $2 million. That was called a non-contingency bid, though, so it didn't include any room for any additionals. As anybody has done a renovation, you never come in on budget. But rather than go through every line by line of all of the changes that were made or adjustments that were made, I pulled out some key issues that we needed to address to spike up a little bit of the over budget. A couple of things that of course, we didn't anticipate was the extreme winter that we had that caused winter conditions that needed to be had, which we had to bring in propane and things of that nature to address all of the changes that we had to make more to the court because we actually did some addition over there. One of the other things that we committed to as we did this project was ensuring that we had all of our safety factors covered, and we realized that as we were doing the project that City Hall did not have a congruent fire alarm system, meaning that if there was a fire in the police department, potentially City Hall employees wouldn't know if there was a fire here, that kind of thing. So we took the opportunity to make sure that the fire alarm system throughout the entire building is now connected. And that was a cost that was added. We had a couple of issues that, of course, happen when you have older buildings that helped cause the spike in the price, and that was we had some significant water and sewer infrastructure repairs that need to be made in the court area. And then we also had some structural issues in the court building that we weren't surprised at, but until we pulled down walls, we didn't know what those were. So we were able to fix all of those. Another significant portion was the increase in what we term as hardware costs, which is all of the hardware that goes to all of the doors throughout all of the buildings. And you would be surprised at how many doors there are in both buildings together. So we had two things happen. One, we underestimated the hardware in the first place, but secondarily, and more importantly, we again took the opportunity to increase our security levels in both the police and court building at a significant level by making sure that we had access, using access control through swiping of cards and making sure that all of the doors in all particular areas in both places met the standards that we needed for security. So those are some of the big issues. And we have a few more pending. These are just the ones that change orders have been approved. We'll finish it up next week. But I want to say that even through all of these changes, that we have remained committed to using the capital improvement fee that is on the tickets. There, again, at the end of this project, we've made our commitment, and we will finish that commitment of not using taxpayer dollars for this project. We will go into next fiscal year a little bit to finish that project, but again, we remain with that commitment, and we were able to stay within that line. So we're very excited about that and feel that the goals of this project, and again, as we talk and complete that project the next council meeting, that we had significant goals for this project, and that was creating a safer environment, making sure the environment was ADA compliant, and that met our service needs, because in both places, the service, we couldn't give that service delivery that we needed. But we really feel that we made the environment in both places much more safe and secure, and we also feel that the product at the end of the day was done very well, that will give us a very good life for both buildings, and that was the most important as well.
For clarity, may I ask, so that what you're bringing to us next council meeting, will that be an additional ask of funds?
Yes, yeah, there'll be some more pending charges, and then I'll also have the overview of the final budget and that kind of thing, so we can close that out.
In the packet, you give the account number, the fund number, but you actually didn't give the specific name. Is that the capital improvement fund?
I'm sorry, yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, I would move that we approve the increase of $317,190 to the daily company contract, $8,100 to Timco carpet installations for court chambers, and $5,592 to Palmer Moving Company for the District Court and Ferndale Police Department renovation to be taken from funds 445-000-977.00.
Support. Moved by Martin, supported by Polika. Any discussion or questions on this item? How about on timeline? When?
I was going to do that call to action. I can do that now. We have scheduled court to move the week of the 20th. So by the last week of June. So by the last week of June, they should be over there. Wow. I believe the police is right during that week as well. We do have an open house ribbon cutting scheduled for Thursday, June 26th at 5:30. We encourage people to come and take a tour of that building. And we're going to, I believe court hasn't confirmed yet, but there might be a Friday that they'll close to help move. And as soon as we get that notice, we'll make sure we notice everybody. But by July 1st, we're going to be good to go. Right, Tim? Good. So once those dates are solidified, we'll make sure the general public knows.
That's why she said 15. Yeah. All right. Other questions or comments? Sherilyn, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Item C is the consideration of an updated contract to establish the interlocal agreement for the on-site health and wellness center effective immediately. And Jenna, you're going to introduce that item?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We brought this item to you back now, I think about 2 months ago, when we believed that we still had 4 communities that were participating. Unfortunately, between then and now, Hazel Park has withdrawn and will no longer be a part of this initial clinic model. So this agreement is simply just removing Hazel Park from being part of the interlocal, consistent in every other way as the agreement that you initially signed.
Gotcha. If I may, through the chair, though, by way of clarity, it increases our overall capital cost for implementation because we're dividing it over a fewer number of communities, correct?
Very minimally. Long-term, there's no difference because it's a pay-as-you-go based on number of employees. So without them being part of the interlocal, we wouldn't be paying for the costs associated with their people. From an
We're splitting the original capital expenditure to open the clinic, though.
Yes.
And do we know what those are? Those costs?
I'm going to defer to Cindy on the specifics.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Cindy Pavella with Cornerstone Municipal Advisory Group, and we're the company that was assisting the 3 and the 4 cities in looking at this concept. When the city of Hazel Park decided to pull out of this project because of their own budgetary concerns, they were fully supportive of this. They just felt that this was not a good time financially for them to do it. When they pulled out, it just slightly adjusted the city of Ferndale's exposure. And the reason for that is because the city of Hazel Park was actually the smallest city. So now the fixed costs of providing this center, now Ferndale is going to be 22% of the cost. Madison Heights will take on 29%, and Royal Oak will take on 49%. So over the first year, we're not expecting. We are expecting that all of the cities are going to ramp up in terms of utilization, but over a 3-year period, we're expecting $108,000 of savings for the city of Ferndale alone.
Correct, but we don't know what those fixed costs are, correct?
Yes, we do. So the fixed costs for the city of Ferndale, assuming that there's 118 employees, assuming that the center is going to be given 4 doctor hours just for the city of Ferndale alone, assuming that 35% of those doctor hours are going to be used, the fixed expense is going to be $86,000 in the first year. The variable expense, which is actually seeing the doctor, having pharmacy, generic pharmacy being distributed to them, and any labs and supplies, that variable expense, and we call it variable because it all depends on how many people are actually using the center, that'll be $25,000. So between the fixed costs of $86,000, the variable costs of $25,000, in the first year is going to be $111,000. Now that $111,000 does not take into account the cost of retrofitting the center, which is going to be located in the basement, lower level of the city of Madison Heights City Hall. That structure was very well suited. We're not expecting huge amounts of money to retrofit it. It already has 2 rooms and plenty of space for patients to be able to use it. So right now, the city of Madison Heights is conducting their own survey with an architect to find out how much that will be. So again, for the first year, the total center expense will be $111,000. What we're assuming is that we're going to divert costs away from the self-funded medical plan of office visits and generic pharmacy of about $124,000. So if we're avoiding the costs of the regular plan, which you probably would have spent anyway, if we take that money and we divert the utilization into the center, the $124,000 minus the $111,000 of the center expense leaves you with about a $13,000 savings in the first year.
In year 1.
So if I may, though, in the next agenda item, we have a contract that designates a certain number of prescription drugs and medical supplies that will be in place when the clinic opens. Does that go under those initial fixed costs, or is that on an unused basis, or is that included in your $103,000 number?
Thank you. In the first year, the fixed cost includes a $35,000 setup fee, which is being shared by the 3 cities.
So yes, it's inclusive of the $103,000.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
does the $111,000 in expenses versus the 124 approximately, possibly 1,000 in savings come out of the same account?
Yes, the healthcare account. What you would
Not,
pay.
this isn't general fund dollars, this is health,
Well, healthcare comes out of
Well,
the general
I
fund.
mean,
but
it's all general
yes,
fund,
so-
but it's-
Yes, it'll come out of the healthcare balance, so the account number we pay the Blue Cross Blue Shield out of,
Right.
those costs will come right out of that.
And what is your 5-year projection? If the first year's 13 after fixed costs, then what are you projecting over a 5-year period, or what's the longest projection you've made?
Right. The Care Here agreement, which is what is next on your agenda,
Right.
that's a 3-year commitment. What we did, though, is we negotiated with Care Here to say that each city has an opt-out after the first year. If something just goes terribly, terribly wrong, which we're not expecting, that they could jump out of that contract. So we only looked at 3 years. So the first year was 13,000 of savings, the second year 38,000, because we're expecting more people, the utilization to go up. In the third year, almost 57,000. So that's why over a 3-year period, then the savings would be about 108,000.
It's also my understanding that Battle Creek already has their clinic up since February, correct?
Yes.
They actually, from what we heard, have experienced a much greater increase in use than they actually anticipated.
May I ask questions about that? Did they sign a contract with Care First as well? Or Care, what is it, Care Here? Are they using Care Here as the vendor as well in Battle Creek?
Yes.
So I guess we'll save it for the next agenda.
Okay.
Thanks.
But we can talk, we can talk about both of them now.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm curious where they got the numbers from, because in the contract for Care Here designates we don't get any reports from them for 60 days after the first 12 months of experience. So where they're coming out with data now, I don't understand that based on the terms of the contract.
Sure. I think that's coming from the actual Human Resources Department, if I'm not mistaken.
But if they don't get that from Care Here, where do they get that from?
I'm not sure.
They get the information from Care Here. What the city of Battle Creek told us was their expectations as to the number of people that were utilizing the center is far greater
I
than
understand
what
that.
they
I'm
expected.
concerned about the reporting requirements in the contract with Care Here, and if Battle Creek's under a similar contract, where do they get their numbers from to make that statement? Because according to the contract in front of us, Care Here has 14 months to provide any data to us.
Care Here will provide the cities, each of the 3 cities, with information each month, and that is because this is a total pass-through. So as generic medications are being purchased, the city sees that amount. As laboratory services are going, the city sees that amount.
I understand how the experience reporting works, but in the contract, Article 1, Section 12, says they have 12 months plus 60 days to provide reporting. So I'm only asking out of clarity. I'm not trying to be
Oh,
combative about it.
absolutely. No, I understand.
But according to the contract, they are under no obligation other than passing on an experience reporting cost, which is different than actual utilization reports, back to the city for 14 months.
Okay, and I understand. So once a month, Care Here will be meeting with me and the cities to go over the utilization. So they will, it's at that time that the cities will decide, well, we've only started off with 4 hours a week, and we have much higher utilization than we expected, so now we need to increase the hours, or the reverse could happen. So, yes, in the contract, it does state that an annual report will be given to each city, but every month, Care Here is going to be providing information.
All due respect, it doesn't mention an annual report. So anyway, it's a point of concern about the contract when we get there. Whatever.
All right, so we're still on the interlocal agreement, which essentially removes Hazel Park.
Right, and can you explain the conditions if Hazel Park wanted to opt back in?
The interlocal agreement is pretty specific in stating that these 3 cities are the founding fathers, if you will. So they are going to be the owners. Any other employer that wants to come in, any other city, and we've had several cities approach us about this since Royal Oak passed it Monday night, is they are considered to be an additional employer, which means they need to pay a fee to join, and then their monthly charge to be part of this is higher. It's $5 per employee per month. So anyone coming in is going to pay a little bit more, and that is to give back to the 3 founding cities the amounts of money that they have paid in all of this R&D. So yes, Hazel Park can come in. Unless the three cities decide that they want to treat Hazel Park again as a founding member, that's up to the three cities. But right now, the way the interlocal is written, they would be an additional employer, subject to a higher fee.
Is that for life? I mean, or
Three-year term, right?
well, I'm talking about I don't know, if Hazel Park or Warren comes in, do they have an ongoing agreement for $5 per person, or is that just for a certain term, like we're saying 3 years is a contract? Is their agreement for 3 years, and then they can then become a partner? Or
It's up to the cities for
Okay.
right now, for how long they want that to
Agreements for an
continue.
indefinite term.
Yes, it's indefinite.
Okay.
This is an interlocal agreement, so if you want them to be part of your interlocal, then you need to go through that process.
Okay, but the Care Here term is for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Clear.
But, so,
Thank you.
so Dan, for the interlocal agreement, which there's 3 cities will be party to, any changes, additions, deletions would come back to all 3 councils
Yes.
to modify the interlocal agreement?
The interlocal,
So
yes.
if next year Oak Park wanted to join, that would require all 3 communities modifying the interlocal agreement at council?
I believe so.
Yeah, well, it would be required to adhere to the terms of the interlocal agreement as it relates to additional employers. And I don't believe that requires approval of every.
And I guess it gets to my broader question of who's the governing board of this organization? Maybe that's my...
We have talked with the 3 cities about this, and to say, you need to determine who is going to be the spokesperson. Is it the city manager? Is it the finance director? Are you going to have your own little subcommittee? Each city needs to determine what that's going to be.
And there is an advisory committee that's spelled out in the interlocal agreement.
Right, it's just who.
Each employer designates who's going to be that advisory committee representative.
If I may, since we're blending agenda topics, how does that apply to the HIPAA privacy officer? Because in the contract, it designates the employer will have the responsibility of a HIPAA privacy officer, not any vendor relationship. So in this interlocal agreement, who then is the responsibility for compliance with HIPAA?
The agreement with Care Here specifies who the privacy officer is.
It
So
simply says the employer will designate a HIPAA privacy officer. It doesn't specify which employer.
Each employer has their own agreement with Care Here,
So
and
each
in
city
their
will designate a
agreement,
HIPAA?
yes.
And do we understand the full weight of that and the requirements around that, including governing a compliance program for vendors at the clinic? And so we're going to have 3 different entities governing a compliance program for HIPAA with one contracted vendor?
Yes, because each employer's population is being treated separately from each employer. So we need to have a business associate agreement and privacy with each employer group with Care Here.
Sure. So when we roll out our annual compliance training, the contractors are going to complete 3 of them, one for each city. Forget the agreements and the business associate agreements, but you're still required to provide compliance training and reporting that you've completed the training. So who's responsible? It seems like a gap in the contract to me. Who's carrying that weight? And if there's a violation, where does that fall back on? And does it fall back on the employers collectively or individually if it's one of our employees who has a HIPAA privacy agreement? That's just like, it seems like a gap in the contract to me.
And
Do you follow me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'm not following too well because...
Okay. You designate a HIPAA compliance officer in order to make sure you're compliant with the law, but with that comes specific regulations about developing and delivering and maintaining a compliance program both for your employees or, in this case, the contractor. And since the agreement says we're responsible for that program, if that's each individual city, then we're responsible individually for training the contractor on HIPAA privacy concerns, protected health information, super PHI, and everything that comes with that. And it's very vague here. Are we going to develop then 3 programs and roll that out for the contractor? Or is there a designated off of the committee to do that? And which goes to my question, do we fully understand what that means from a responsibility perspective upon the city?
Sure.
It would be interesting to learn how Battle Creek manages that
I would
now.
too.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Well,
I think the reason I link it in is because I think it ties to the interlocal agreement, right? If we have responsibilities to that. So I just, I want to make sure the risk to the city is minimal.
What we can do is tighten that up and bring that, if there needs to be any changes, what we'll do is at least provide clarification at the next meeting, but if there needs to be any changes, we could modify what we have.
So then, let me just make sure I'm understanding. So when the city of Ferndale then has its own privacy officer, it's up to the city of Ferndale's privacy officer to make sure that any vendors are being trained.
Have been trained, have completed annually a compliance program. And many times, if it's our vendor in a clinic we own, we may be responsible for developing and delivering that. The laws, specifies where that responsibility lies.
Okay.
And so with the interlocal agreement, my question is there a central core responsibility for that? What you're saying is each city will identify a HIPAA privacy officer? And if that's the case, then I wouldn't think as a vendor they would want 3 of us coming with individual privacy programs at them. And how we deal with PHI, and what happens when a violation's raised. Does it go to the home city? Does it go to this governing body? Does it, there just seems holes in that area of the contract that causes concern for me.
Okay. And so you're looking at that to be incorporated into the interlocal?
I don't care where it's addressed. If it's an executed agreement,
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
We'll get that clarified. It might just be an actual clarification. It might already be there.
It's fine.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have that information today, but
Okay.
we'll double check that, and if there's any modifications that we need to do based on your concerns, we can bring those amendments back.
Let me be clear. I'm going to abstain again as I have from
okay.
previous
Let's
things,
go.
so it's up to my colleagues what they want to do. However, I have to balance my responsibilities to the city as well while not creating a conflict of interest. So I want to raise concerns I have with both contracts, and then I'll step back and let the will of the council be done. I want to be really clear about that. So I'm raising my concerns, and I'll step back and then do with it what you will.
Okay, thank you.
I really appreciate your special talents of knowing the healthcare system
Yes.
intimately. So
So April, am I hearing you, would your preference be for us to pass this and amend it if needed in the
Yes.
future as opposed?
Yes, because I think the problem is that we probably have an answer, it's just unfortunately, we can't provide that tonight. And so, and if there is an area that needs to be addressed, then that's great too, because then we can fix that. And but nothing's going to be open by next
And
week.
in all fairness
Right.
to you,
Right.
I've had issues this week with family circumstances.
Yeah.
I would have forwarded these to you ahead of
No,
time.
it's
but
okay. No.
I don't want to get them on the,
Nope, and
not
we,
have them on the
and
table.
that's why we.
I guess I'm just concerned about approving it tonight. If the change is something that, or if there are changes that are going to be advocated or suggested, it seems that those should be vetted prior to approval of this agreement, since should all the communities approve this agreement, it would require the majority, all of the communities to approve that amendment to achieve the amendment that this body may wish to see advocated.
And Royal Oak adopted it,
They all
you said
did.
already.
So did Madison Heights.
And
Right.
as
And
has
Madison
Madison Heights.
So we could suggest an amendment to the contract that could be easily inserted in the
It
council's
could, but the other issue is that the concerns that Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem, Martin
That's right.
has could actually already be addressed. Unfortunately, we just don't have the right answers today. So
And
there
I-
may not be an amendment that's needed, there just might be a point of clarification.
And I'm sorry to be a pain. I do have a few more I'd like to discuss. Whenever that's appropriate. It's more on this next agenda item than
That's
this.
fine. If you guys are comfortable with the interlocal, we can go ahead and, they're kind of a dual
Yeah, they go
conversation. So it doesn't
together.
matter where you do it, so.
What would be the ramifications of waiting 2 weeks to adopt this?
We are pretty much at a standstill of moving forward until they get approved, so it would just be nice to be able to continue to have the support that we're moving forward, especially if the issues are administrative in nature, if you will. I mean, again, the program is not going to be built next week, so we have time to get those points taken care of, but we can't begin working with Care Here to start. It's almost kind of like we need council's approval to know that Ferndale's in. Now, granted, again, if some of these things are so surmountable that we're not in unless they're fixed, we get that, but we think we all believe that HIPAA needs to be addressed appropriately. We would never want to be out of compliance with that.
Do you want me to run through what my other, there's just a
That
few
would be
more,
great.
and then you can get a sense if it's
Yes.
insurmountable or not. In the Care First Contract section, Article 1, Section 13 mentions that Essentially, it puts the responsibility on the employer to become aware of any failure of medical professional to comply to the obligations of the medical professional field. So there's this credentialing piece that seems like it falls outside of, after the initial hire anyway, it's silent on how they maintain and monitoring of the employees and their medical credentials should something fall into disarray. Article 2, Section 5 says there's a $25,000 initial setup fee for any workman's comp work that's above the initial and agreed upon workman's comp work, but never does it say what the normal workman's comp work is. It just launches to the additional work with a $25,000 tag to it. So that I had a concern about that. And then Article 1, Section 9 indicates that contracted employees would be entitled to a cost of living increase, but there's no benchmark tied to it. It simply says a cost of living increase as agreed by the employer or whatever. I would be more comfortable with that clause if it was tied to inflation or something that was a set number that you could go back to and not turn it into a negotiation every year. That's it.
And so, just so you know, several of those items were presented in the actual proposal. So it was not stated here, but it is in the proposal. So just so you know.
My question would be, what's the validity of the proposal and that versus an executed agreement, and what's the city liable for at that point then?
Okay. Well, and I can tell you on the occupational health is that it is a separate line of service, and so that was contained within the proposal, but we know that the city of Ferndale is not interested in that component at this time. Okay.
Either is the other three correct? We're all waiting a year, from what I understand.
Everybody's waiting.
Well, that solves my concern on that one.
Just to clarify, so on Section 13 about the credentialing, that is, you need, what do you want on that? What's the clarification?
Well, the language in 13 makes it, I appreciate the language that says if we become aware of a problem with a physician in the clinic, that it will be rectified, but nowhere does it talk about the process of ongoing credentialing and making sure that the physician, like I don't think it's our role to go check and make sure somebody's license hasn't been suspended unless it hits the paper, which is where we would become aware of it. You know, these things change based on professional credentials. And it's silent that we're holding them accountable to making sure these folks maintain their credentials. But it says if we happen to become aware of it, it'll address it. It's silent on the front end of that, as far as I could tell.
And for that, I would ask you then to go to Section 1.02, which describes what CARE Here needs to do in terms of credentialing the professionals and making sure that the professionals are having their license, that they do have medical malpractice, and that in the event anything should happen, then CARE Here will take action on that.
Okay, I guess I read that as the initial startup, but if we're comfortable it's ongoing, I'm fine with that. It raised a concern when I read that.
No, and that's why we're using CARE Here is for that particular reason, so that we're not managing
I would
it.
expect it from them, yeah. I'm looking for it contractually.
So is that one okay, or do you want that clarified in a different way?
I'm just pointing out, if they're okay, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, okay. And then the workers' comp was just if we choose to go there.
Right.
Which once we go through this first year, we're going to look at that.
So we're essentially saying we're not, but I don't want to get caught on year 2 to say, yeah, we'll do this and get hit up front with a $25,000 fine because it's outside of ordinary, and ordinary was 0.
If you were to do this in year 2 or year 3, because this is a separate line of business, it is a separate setup fee. So that's why it's stated here.
Okay. So if folks are comfortable with that.
And then cost of living, it's in the proposal, but in your opinion, you feel it should be
My
in
opinion,
the...
it should be tied to a steady benchmark and not just generally say a cost of living increase.
What that is.
Tied to inflation or something that's
And I can tell you that the proposal had a 4% each year.
I do recall that. I'm just, again, focused on the agreement we're executing. You know what I mean? Because I think one's legally enforceable and one's questionably not.
Sure, I get you. So it would be best to have what they said in the proposal in the agreement.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I consider those details that can easily be made in an amendment.
Thank you.
They can easily what?
Thank you for
Made in
hearing
an
me out.
amendment.
All of them, including the HIPAA concerns?
Yes. Because whatever we do next week, and then 2 weeks, will either be to clarify the HIPAA or to have an amendment in front of you. You could, I would prefer that you approve it tonight, however you're uncomfortable, you do not have to. All of these things can be addressed by the time we come back at the next time.
And I'll just say, I have no reason to doubt the city manager. If she believes it can be addressed, I have no reason to call that into question.
Jenny, do
Just
you
want to
have
make
any?
sure they're addressed.
I was just going to make the point that you had made earlier, that HIPAA is very important to us, so we wouldn't approve any amendment or go forward in any way with this project if that wasn't addressed to our satisfaction.
You could always put in the resolution, add to it bearing more information provided on HIPAA.
You could subject
and
to
a cons-
clarification on the
yeah.
article.
Subject.
What article was that again?
HIPAA was, I didn't write the number down, hang on.
And that was in the Care Here one, right?
It's in the second one.
It's actually in the second
Yeah.
one, but they are connected.
Right.
I believe that once we ask the question and have the right answer, it's probably already there. It's just unfortunate we don't know how to respond to
And
that.
then I'd reiterate my concern. I understand you're sitting down monthly to go over experience. The 14-month reporting requirement. I think it's a potential risk.
Well, whatever we do is going to require our other two municipal partners to, their councils, to vote on an amendment either way, right? Because they've already approved this local agreement. So no matter what we do, they're going to have to do that. So just want to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, if we do make those changes, that, I think HIPAA is separate than the three items that Mayor Pro Tem brought up as it relates to the cost of living and the credentialing and the workers' comp.
I'll just tell you, because I'm not an expert in this field, and I'd like to know what the answers to his questions are, I don't feel comfortable voting on this tonight. I think we should table it, and I don't hear a compelling reason why 2 weeks would delay the project. I know you said we want to express our support, but we expressed it the first time by passing the interlocal agreement, so I would hope that folks understand that we're serious about this. But I guess, for me, to be prudent about it,
Sure.
I think we should address these issues.
I'm going to concur and go with that. I know it's not exactly what you want to hear tonight. But you guys have done an amazing job putting this together. We just happen to have a healthcare expert on city council, or an insurance expert, and I think has brought essential insight to the contract, and so.
And my interest is not to stop this. I want to be clear. I just want to
Of
make sure the
course.
city's
Nor
interest is
is
protected.
mine,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
just want to make sure we.
Not only
address
are you
these
protecting Ferndale's interests, you're also protecting Madison Heights and Royal Oak. So at the end of the day, you're making it stronger for everybody. So.
So I'm suggesting that we table the next two items. How do, I don't.
No, I agree with you both. I'm fully supportive of the project and the program, but I'm not prepared to give my approval on these documents. And I don't see why over the next 2 weeks, we still can't have those conversations continuing forward, because, like you said, we've already approved it once. This isn't by any means disapproval. We just want to make sure that we have the,
Point of clarification.
thank you.
No, I'm excited about the project. I'm
Me
excited.
too.
I thought they
Yeah.
were first-year expenses, so to find out that we'll begin savings in year one is very exciting, so please don't misunderstand. I'm just not a lawyer or a healthcare or an insurance expert, and these sound like valid questions to me, and I don't hear a compelling reason why 2 weeks would be, an obstacle, so, okay. Do we need a motion to table, or we just,
There has not been a motion, so.
There has
if there's
not.
no motion, it dies for lack of support.
All right. All right. Then we'll move on to call the council. And I see the police chief in the back. Anything for the good of the community this evening, chief? All right. Fire Chief Sullivan, anything for the community this evening? All right. All right. DPW Director Lloyd, nothing for the community? You're shaking your head. Jill, anything from the Recreation Department this evening?
Just a couple quick announcements. I wanted to remind all of our residents that
The Oak Park Pool is opening on June 14th, and due to the interlocal agreement that we have with the Oak Park Recreation Department that was passed back in December, our residents will be able to use the Oak Park Pool at the resident rate of $3 per visit for ages 3 to 54. Ages 55 and older will be able to use it for $2 a visit. The pool is open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 1 to 8 p.m., Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 1 to 6 p.m. Their phone number is 248-691-7555 for more information on pool rentals, swim lessons, open swim, that sort of thing. So you can contact them for more information. As Jeannie mentioned earlier, our annual Trunk and Treasure Sale is this Saturday from 9 to 3 at City Hall. And lastly, if you're looking for a location for your next birthday party, graduation party, our park pavilions are available for rent. We have a pavilion at Martin Road Park and Geary Park, and dates are filling up fast, and we are taking reservations 7 days a week now through the end of the season. And then our rental application is available on the city website, ferndalemi.gov.
Bathroom update?
Excellent.
Huh? Can you do bathroom update?
Oh, bathroom update.
And ranger update.
Yeah. Yes. We are moving forward working with Chief Collins and Lloyd on our park rangers. They have been hired and they will officially begin training next week, and we'll get them out into the parks next weekend. So they will be on duty 7 days a week and traveling from park to park, checking on trash, interacting with park users, checking for vandalism, anything that, could be wrong. They'll be reporting to either myself, Lloyd, or Chief where it fits. So we're excited to get that going. I believe our key access locks will be installed by the end of next week as well. So hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll be fully up and running with our rangers and locks. So that's it.
Excellent. I think, by the way, the parks look better than they have in years. I know there's still a lot of things we want to do, but I want to thank Jill and Lloyd and your group and Councilman Polika, your recreation group, is all working together to, I think, make our parks look as better than they have in years. So thank you.
It's all our employees. They're the ones that are doing the work.
Chief Information Officer, Joe, anything from your neck of the woods? All right. Jenny left, so Sherilyn, anything from the clerk's office?
Well, it's that time of year. We have an election coming up, August 5th. The state primary election, there are 2 statewide proposals on the ballot, and for those of our residents in the Hazel Park School District, there is a millage proposal for them on the ballot. We are accepting applications for AV ballots already, and we expect to have the ballots in-house by the end of next week. So we are gearing up.
Yeah, it's that time. We have a competitive state rep and state senate race, so probably a higher than normal primary turnout, I would imagine.
That is what they are predicting.
Are you activating the volunteer program again, or are you calling on previous volunteers? What's your plan?
Both. For election inspectors, we will be calling on all of those in our database, including the new ones who we were able to get on board in November. And yes, we will be starting up the recruitment program again.
Right. Good. Jenny, did you have anything else from an HR perspective? All right. April, anything else from the city manager's office?
I have a couple. One, I wanted to say congratulations to Sherilyn and Marnie, who have completed their Certified Michigan Municipal Clerk certification. So, again, it shows to how much of our professionalism that we have here in our staff. So congratulations to both of them. I just wanted to acknowledge that for many of you, you've probably seen the purple ribbons that are along I think Woodward and 9 Mile. That is for the Relay for Life for the cancer walk, and that will go through June 15th. And then next council meeting, Karen will be bringing a few more budget amendments to get us through the end of the year, as well as a reminder that on Thursday, June 26th at 5:30, we will have a ribbon cutting and tours for the police and court buildings so the residents can see, as well as anybody else who's interested. So we're very excited about all of that. That's what I have.
Excellent. Dan Christ, anything else from the legal perspective? All right. Mayor Pro Tem Martin, anything else?
Just two things. One, I want to congratulate Joe on his, what I understand, successful engagement. Congratulations. I understand the proposal only took 30 slides in an hour and a half. But I think that was, congratulations, you must have done it right. That's a good one. I put something similar on Facebook. But also, I, on a personal level, had a visiting parent who fell ill this weekend, and I already sent my thanks privately, but I want to acknowledge it publicly. I had to call 911 Sunday morning, and the response from the fire and police units was just outstanding. I was a little rattled because, of course, it's my parent. But you want to talk about a group of people that came in and backed up by Royal Oak even, that made me feel comfortable and had command of the situation, and I never feared for my mother's safety through that process. And so I can't thank you guys enough and pass that on to whoever was there, but it was really made me feel comfortable when I had a chance to look back and reflect on it. So your folks did just an outstanding job, so I'm really appreciative.
Thank you. Councilman Polika.
Just want to say that Ferndale Pride, the weekend before, was extremely successful. Best day weather-wise, thank you. I heard it was your,
I ordered that.
Your doing.
That's correct.
And the best crowds. It was just an incredible day overall. And last Wednesday was kind of a busy day for me as well. It was tree planting. We had second graders come to Oppenheim Park and help plant a pear tree? Tulip tree. And that was a lot of fun. We gave all the students seedlings, and Mayor Pro Tem Martin and Councilwoman Piana joined me. And after that, I saw a demonstration, fire suppression demonstration at Fire Station 1, and that was quite interesting. You were doing a demo, Chief Sullivan, for Carpenters, Detroit Carpenters School. Yeah, it was very educational, very informative. I'm wondering if we could maybe get video up on the cable. Thanks. That's all I have.
Excellent. Councilwoman Piana.
I don't have anything tonight.
Nothing. All right. And I just have one item. A week from Thursday is going to be my next Mayor's Business Council meeting, and we're going to discuss personal property tax and how it affects our businesses in town. And so I look forward to that. I'll report back on that, and anybody from council wants to join us there, just let me or someone know. That's going to happen early Thursday morning, June the 19th. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.